Okay, what's up, gamers? This is gonna be sort of a weird thing going on here. We're gonna very quickly. I know the title is Theory Stream. It is Theory Stream, but we are very first because at the end of the last stream I did not complete the tea party and the question mark. We are going to do that first, very quickly. I'm gonna start the tea party from the beginning just because I was a little bit tired. Don't think I really necessarily grasped all of it. So we're gonna do that. And then we are going to dive into doing our theories. Excuse me. I don't know, my throat's not clearing. And then we're going to dive into doing our theories. I don't know how long we'll be here. Probably, I would say like 2-3 hours maybe. It's not going to be super long. But if you're seeing this now, it's because it's stitched onto the other episode. We're technically a day in the future. Can you believe that? Wow, all together in one video. If you're watching it on the YouTube. I don't have a clue what to make of all this. Please, someone explain what happened yesterday in a way that I can understand. I continued helping myself to the food in the mansion's kitchen. Sorry, let me... Okay, yep. That massive commercial refrigerator had everything. I could eat and drink as much as I liked. I'd have more than enough to eat even if the typhoon didn't clear up for a week. With a bottle in one hand, half of which I'd already drunk, I helped myself to some sliced ham. I wonder just how expensive this stuff is. Man, you ingredients are out of luck. If only you had Go to cook you, you could have been reborn as much more incredible food. I looked at the clock. Very soon it would be midnight. October 5th, the second day would end. The insanity of yesterday's October 4th didn't seem real. That was how little had happened after my so-called test. Nothing was happening. No phone calls, no letters, no one coming to see me, no one coming to attack me. Not a goddamn thing. Give me back all the time and energy I wasted being on edge. An entire day, a full 24 hours, and absolutely nothing happened. And I'm sure that nothing will continue to happen as well. A full 24 hours ago, I was called to the front of the mansion by Beatrice. There I was given some kind of weird test to do with determining the successor to the head or something. I gave a serious answer in my own way, but unfortunately we just didn't seem to be getting each other. Beatrice got bent out of shape for no reason and stopped talking to me. I yelled at her to say something, but she wouldn't say a word. Then I asked where Maria was, and she just told me to go to the chapel and went away. What an astounding anticlimax. Stupid as it was still a test. So at least tell me whether I passed or failed, for hell's sake. What is she trying to say? Good work, your results will be mailed to you later or something? Annoying bitch. In any case, I then headed to the chapel. Both George and Jessica had been killed after failing their tests. I couldn't let Maria be killed too. Besides, I thought this could be a chance to catch whoever it was while they were in the process of trying to kill Maria. When I was young, Jessica often told me that I'd get in trouble if I went near the chapel, so I'd never been there, but I at least knew where it was. I couldn't sense anyone there, but there was a bundle of keys lying in front of the door. I thought this might be a message to open the door to the chapel, but after trying all the keys, I found that none of them fit. I also called Maria's name, but there was no answer whatsoever. I searched around the chapel, but there was a limit to what I could do in the pitch black with just a flashlight. I realized that this key bundle might be a set of master keys, which could possibly open the door to the mansion. Finding no sign of Maria, I returned to the mansion. The mansion was wrapped in silence, and in a horrible stench. Still, it's pretty amazing how good humans are at adapting. Technically, that smell was still pervading the entire mansion, but I'd grown completely used to it and stopped minding it at this point. It didn't feel like anything more than any old house where someone had burnt some meat. The stench knocked me back on first entering, but I ignored it and decided to head to the dining hall, where I found all those corpses that were in such a sorry state that Goda and Kumasawa had hesitated to speak of them in any detail. They were the remains of the very first victims, Aunt Natsui and the rest. Each of them had half of their head dramatically splattered out, and it was such a gruesome sight that even without knowing a thing about examining corpses, I could pronounce them 100% dead. On top of that, the remaining half of their faces were left like normal, so it was even easy to identify them. They'd really pulled out all the stops for these corpses. And finally, the bodies here weren't just the 6 of the first twilight. They had grown in number and now included one more. The 7th corpse was Maria. She was lying next to Aunt Rosa, as though sleeping alongside her. I cried. At the death of an innocent young girl, and at the cruel way my dad and the others had died. I ran around the mansion swinging my hat stand spear, yelling, "Come out, you bastard." Sorry, I had to clear my throat there, so I muted. But there was absolutely no sign of anyone else. Thinking that they might be hiding somewhere and scheming to attack me from behind, I went around searching for possible hiding places. Sometimes being cautious, sometimes intentionally letting my guard down, trying all kinds of things. But in the end, not so much as a kitten appeared. Then morning came. My tension and fatigue, mixed together with my drowsiness, made for the worst kind of dawn. Humans are pretty incredible. Even though I didn't know where the hell the murderer was hiding, I was prioritizing drowsiness and fatigue over worrying for my own life. By this time, I was starting to feel pretty ridiculous. I'd walked around the mansion for a full 6 hours until dawn broke, yelling at them to show themselves. I had done a painstaking search, tired myself out, and even let my guard down. Still, no one was coming to attack me. And so at that point, I just said, screw it, do whatever you want. The boat wouldn't come until the typhoon passed. They were saying on TV that it wouldn't pass until tomorrow, so I had a whole day to waste. The idea of just lazing about didn't seem very appealing, so even though I knew it would probably make the police mad, I decided to play detective a bit. First, the dining hall, where the very first murders occurred. The 6 who were killed in the beginning really were pitiful to look at. The weapon was probably a gun. Maybe their heads were split by something powerful like a magnum bullet or a shotgun. That seemed like valid reasoning. In comparison, Maria, who was the 7th body, had died in a far better and cleaner way. At a glance, there were no external wounds, and it wasn't clear how she had been killed, but there were signs that bubbles had been foaming from her mouth, and it looked like a typical death by poisoning that you might see on a TV drama. Wasn't Maria called out to the chapel and given her test there? Then why is she here in the corpse-filled dining hall, lying next to her mother dead? Assuming that the cause of the death was poison, who gave it to her? Her clothes aren't disturbed at all. Hard to imagine that she was forcibly pushed down and given an injection of poison. It was probably better to assume that she was given a poison capsule or something and made to swallow it. That said, compared to the violently mutilated corpses scattered about this room, Maria's corpse was far too clean. With a gun, all you need to do is pull the trigger, but poison, whether injected or made to be swallowed, would take a lot more effort. Bearing in mind the culprit's brutal nature too, I felt that Maria's death alone had clearly been given special treatment. Why was Maria alone given a sleep-like death? She was killed, so in that sense I still felt very sorry for her. There can be no doubt about that. But for some reason, the manner of Maria's murder in particular seemed very courteous to me. Maria had her hands joined on her chest in the way that the dead often do. Did Maria do that herself before dying? Isn't this usually done by someone else after the person dies? Maria was resting in peace, as though sleeping together with her mother, whose head was half crushed. For some reason, the contrast really bugged me. There are probably a lot of mysteries surrounding Maria's death, starting with the cause. And more than anything else, the biggest mystery of this dining hall was the pitfalls. The pitfalls that both Uncle Krause's group and Goda's had mentioned. After the 6 had been killed, 5 more had fallen through pitfalls and been captured. What are pitfalls? Those things that suddenly open and you fall through them, right? The floor was firmly laid with a majestic, if a bit worn out, carpet. It was clearly a single piece. If pitfalls are meant to open up in it, there would have to be a seam in that one place. And anyway, if there was some trick like a pitfall, wouldn't it creak when you walked on it? No matter how much I walked over or ran my hands over the carpet, I just couldn't imagine that a pitfall was hidden there. In the first place, it would be one thing if a single person had fallen, but it was a full 5 people. From what I could piece together from all of their stories, each one of them had fallen from a different location, so at the very least there had to be 5 separate places concealing pitfalls. So what does this mean? Was this room actually made with pitfalls across the entire floor, so that with a single button press you could open up a pitfall in the location of your choice? Some kind of contraption like that? That kind of ridiculous mechanism would be surprising even in a ninja mansion. But even so, if Dad and the rest heard about this, maybe they'd say, "I wouldn't put it past Grandfather, you'd bet he'd do this, he'd make this." In any event, I didn't learn anything more than that from the dining hall. Do the pitfalls not exist? Or do they exist, but I just can't find them? Amateur that I am? I can't say for sure. Since they claim that pitfalls were there, I can't ignore the pitfalls even if I can't find them. The next ones to be killed had been Jessica and George. I'd already discovered George when I was called out for my test. He was called out to the arbor in the rose garden and shot in the forehead, probably with a gun. As for Jessica, she was called to her own room on the second floor of the mansion. I found the door to her room locked, but that wasn't a problem at all since I had the master keys. And the inside of the room was horrible, but the corpse was nothing I hadn't already familiarized myself with in the dining hall, so I'd built up a bit of an immunity. The phone receiver was dangling off the hook. Was she killed while she was on the phone with me? Jessica was leaning against the wall right next to it, with half of her head splattered out. As far as I could tell by looking at the scene, it looked as though she had been killed while on the phone. In that case, had the culprit been there before her eyes? I hadn't gotten that impression from Jessica's voice over the phone. I'm pretty sure Jessica said, "They got me." It's probably best to assume that she had already received a fatal wound at the time of the phone call. I think there's something else to note of this. It's interesting that, I'm gonna add some stuff to my notes here. These are notes from the end of the last stream. I'm just gonna add some stuff in here, so. Okay, okay. It's probably best to assume that she had already received a fatal wound at the time of the phone call. That's right, and she also said this. By the time you get here, I'll be a corpse with half my head spilled out. She definitely said that. From what I could tell by looking at Jessica's corpse, there were no wounds on her other than the damage to her head. Then she was injured seriously enough that she steeled herself for death and then died halfway through the phone call. But it feels like, with the way she was talking on the phone, she was out of danger for the time being. You shouldn't be able to have a casual conversation over the phone if the killer is right in front of you. So did the culprit come partway through the phone call and kill her? No, that can't be right. After all, this room was locked. No, like hell that counts for anything. If the culprit had stolen a master key from one of the victims, the fact that it was locked is meaningless. But there are no external wounds other than her head. In which case, should I assume the fatal wound she was prepared to die from and the actual wound that destroyed her head were two different events? Both of them made to the same part of the body? In other words, Jessica was struck severely to the head and received an incredibly bad wound. Then she called me and either lost consciousness or died while on the phone. Then the culprit came and destroyed her head for real or something. Cover up evidence, maybe? After being called to this room, Jessica was attacked by the culprit and seriously injured. And the culprit thought they'd killed her and went away for the time being. But then Jessica miraculously started breathing again and called me with a literal dying message. Then the culprit realized that they had failed in killing her and rushed back to deliver the final blow to Jessica, who had lost consciousness from massive blood loss. That seems to make sense, more or less, except for how Jessica was able to accurately predict the form of that final blow. And there was one more thing that bugged me about the phone call from Jessica. Jessica said this. George didn't make it either. Instant death, that was. She said it almost as though she had witnessed George being killed. But while you certainly could see the rose garden from the window in Jessica's room, the arbor that George had been called out to was very far away. You could only just make out the roof. And on the fact that it was the middle of the night of a typhoon, and on the fact that it was the night of a typhoon, it's very hard to imagine that she was able to witness everything that happened by the arbor from this window. And most important of all, Jessica left before George. So she shouldn't have known that George's test had taken place by the arbor. Okay. How did Jessica know that George had been killed? Then, in the course of my search of the entire mansion, I found Kiri's corpse as well. She was in an old guest room tucked away on the first floor. This was where all of us relatives used to stay before the guest house was built. The situation with Kiri was just like Jessica's. She was probably killed during her phone call with me. The receiver was hanging untidily, and Kiri was collapsed behind it. But the way she had been killed was different from Jessica. Her head wasn't smashed. Instead, something like a stake with an occult-like design was buried into her forehead. It was too gruesome for me, so I pulled it out. It was only after pulling it that I realized that this might get me in trouble with the police later. So even though it was probably a little late now, I laid it by Kiri's side. Its tip was sharp and stained with enough blood that it must have penetrated fully to the brain. I didn't know what kind of metal it was made of, but it was about as heavy as a paperweight. Certainly if you were stabbed all out with something like this, it might cause a terrible wound. I probably understood what this stake meant. Yeah, I know this. It's the method of killing from the fourth twilight onwards in the witch's epitaph. That gouge with a stake and kill thing, probably. However, the human skull is very hard. Even with all of one's strength, could you really pierce through it this sharply? No. The way I reasoned it, the stake wasn't the cause of death, it was just used to damage the corpse after death. She was probably killed by being shot with a gun or something, like George, and the stake was stuck into the hole left by the gun. Thinking about it that way, everything works out. But was Kiri really killed with a gun? She had said this on the phone as well. Kiri was under attack even though she was holed up inside a locked room. And this room actually was locked, and she had said something about a golden thread-like thing flying in through the keyhole and attacking her. And in fact, there were 4 places around Kiri's corpse with holes that could have been caused by some kind of attack, but still, a golden thread attacked her through the keyhole? I looked at the door from Kiri's perspective. If it had been one of those old locks like you see in the old mystery novels, where you can peek through to the other side, then you could understand that something might potentially have come through it. But even though the doors in this mansion were old-fashioned, the locks were the familiar average cylinder style that you could find in any normal house. In other words, there was no hole going all the way through by construction. So no matter how thin an object it might have been, it's impossible to imagine that it could have penetrated through the keyhole from the outside and attacked her. Cylinder lock. Keyhole. But Kiri had definitely said that something like a golden thread had flown in through the keyhole, had spun around and around, aiming for her, attacking her. A golden thread attacking through the keyhole. I couldn't understand what it meant at all. Wait, actually, Kiri predicted that I probably wouldn't be able to understand all this. And not just Kiri, Jessica said it over the phone too. No, since the very beginning, from the time we talked with Goda and Kumasawa and got the phone call from Uncle Krause's group, everyone has been saying the same consistent thing. Grandfather is summoning witches and demons and killing people with magic. We witnessed it happening with our own very eyes. No tricks, no illusions. No choice but to believe it. They all said it with one voice. When that mysterious woman calling herself Beatrice appeared, even I pretty much believed that she was a real witch and might start summoning goat monsters right and left. However, after being left alone for a whole day, once my feeling of tension faded completely, I had a level enough head to think that this was way too stupid to possibly be true. In that extraordinary situation where their lives were exposed to danger, did they just lose their heads a little and mistakenly think that a witch was attacking them with magic? But multiple people testified to the same effect, and on top of that, none of their opinions contradicted one another. If it had been a single person's statement, I'd be able to suspect that they just didn't see what they thought they saw, but doing that now is pretty difficult. Then, right next to the back door, I found Uncle Krause with half his head destroyed. Even though he'd escaped the dungeon of Kuwadorian, and somehow made it out of the secret underground passage and all the way here, he was killed. Buried into the gruesome cross-section of his half-destroyed head was a stake with an occult design, just like the one that was driven into Kiri's forehead. And in this situation, it was very hard to imagine that this stake was the murder weapon. He was killed with a powerful gun like the 6 in the dining hall, and after death he was stuck with a stake like Kiri. I wonder if the golden threads that Kiri spoke of attacked Uncle Krause too. Does there exist some kind of tool, like an endoscope, which is very thin but can be moved about at will, and that can also attack people? No way. I've never even heard of anything like that. But even so, if I voiced that suspicion to one of my relatives, perhaps they would say, I wouldn't put it past grandfather to make one. Since I can't refute the existence of a golden thread X that can be moved at will and attack people, my only options are either to accept this completely incomprehensible weapon, or else to accept that these murders were committed with magic. To find the next corpse, I had to go through the back door and search around outside a bit. I believe this is where I stopped the last time, just as a heads up. Behind the mansion in the wild-grown bushes that were almost swallowed up by the forest, there was something like an old well. Ooh. and right next to it were the corpses of Dr. Nanjo and Shannon. Both corpses had their heads smashed, and there was a stake lying right next to each of their destroyed heads, though they weren't stuck in. Interesting, okay. Next, stakes were found next to Nanjo and Shannon's body, but they were not driven in anywhere in particular. All of the corpses were atrocious, but having to look directly at Shannon's lovely face, half of which was blown off, was very painful. Then there was the well, inside which I was told was a secret underground passage to the mysterious mansion Kuwadorian. By this time I was beginning to think that Beatrice and her accomplices might have used this underground passage to leave for Kuwadorian. There were supposedly 10 or more of these guys, and I hadn't seen hide nor hair of any of them. It made a hell of a lot of sense to think they'd already escaped somewhere else. They had this typhoon to contend with. They couldn't go out to sea. Same for the forest. There was no way they could traverse such a deep, uncultivated forest on foot. In that case, there was only one place for them to go. See, this is like an interesting thing that he mentions, though. He says, like, Battler says there's no way they could traverse an uncultivated forest by foot. Yet, we know Rosa did it when she was a kid. Like, don't get me wrong, I don't think they did it here, but it's obviously not impossible. Okay. The mysterious hidden mansion Kuwadorian, the secret underground passage at the bottom of the well. By this time I'd entirely lost my fear of being killed if I happened to come across the enemy. Screwing with me like this time I'll march into your mansion. What the hell? Damn it. The old well had a firm cover on it. The cover was an iron grill. The gaps between the bars were perhaps 20 centimeters square. You could peer inside, but it wasn't really something a human could pass through. If I hadn't known better, I wouldn't have thought it to be anything more than a simple cover to protect against falling in. But from what Kiri had told me, I knew that it had been made to prevent intruders from entering the secret underground passage at the bottom. But the cover was fixed in place extremely firmly, and no matter how much I pushed or pulled, I couldn't even get close to removing it. I couldn't find any obvious lock. Maybe it was sealed by some mechanism. But no matter how much I investigated it, I couldn't find anything to release it. The underground passage in this well is the biggest piece of information I have that Kiri gambled her last moments trying to tell me about. Interesting. So, there is a well cover that is fixed on. We know a bunch of people came through. Yeah, I did. I'm just polishing off the tea party and shit. I started the tea party last night, but I was just like too tired. I was like, look, I was grumpy and tired. I was like, fuck it, I'm just gonna come back. So I'm just gonna polish off the tea party and the question mark shit and then get into the theory stuff. Don't think you can stop me with something like this cover. I'll smash it to bits. I'll search for a tool. I had an idea of where to get one, because I'd seen the various tools in the gardening shed when we locked Goda and Kumasawa in there. How the fuck are you gonna get in, big dog? But the shutter to the gardening shed was locked. On top of that, the key was with Goda, who was inside dead. In other words, the gardening storehouse was a locked room. There was no way to open it from the outside. In that case, I would have to break the shutter. I wonder if there's a tool for that somewhere. I kind of felt like I was going in circles. I'm gonna go to the boiler room and he's gonna find Kinzo, because it seems like every time that Kinzo gets burned, he pops up in the boiler room. Then, while searching for that, I learned that the source of the stench that had been permeating the mansion this whole time was the underground boiler room. The boiler was dimly lit, humid, had a terrible stench, and on top of all that was incredibly creepy. Hopefully. But there were several large tools there, and I was able to find a fire hatchet and a massive bolt cutter. Okay, I want to write this down, because this is probably going to be important. We already knew about the bolt cutter. Bolt cutter and fire hatchet in the boiler room. Already knew about the bolt cutter, but... And grandfather's corpse, too. Strictly speaking, I should probably say that I found the burnt corpse of a person who was probably grandfather. Someone's corpse had been stuffed into the blazing fires of the boiler. However, by coincidence, I was able to notice the number of toes on the corpse. Both feet had 6. Actually, I might have heard that from Dad at some point long ago. Something about grandfather having polydactyly with extra toes. It was apparently an old Ushirimiya tradition for people with extra fingers or toes to be treated as a good omen, saying they had good fortune or something. And that's why grandfather was selected to be the next head, or something along those lines. But I wonder if I can be certain this is grandfather's body just from the number of toes. After all, grandfather was supposed to be the leader of the group of culprits. I don't have a clue why he'd be dead and stuffed in a boiler in a place like this. A mysterious corpse, burning and belching out a terrible stench amid the flames. If it really was grandfather, did that mean that the leader of the group of culprits wasn't grandfather, but that Beatrice after all? Grandfather was used because he was convenient and was then thrown away at the end. Unfortunately, it didn't look like I'd be given a chance to hear grandfather's explanation. Now that I obtained a tool, I thought about immediately taking on the cover to the well, but I decided to break the shutter to the gardening shed first. I had plenty of time to kill anyway. I thought I should check on the condition of Goda and Kumasawa's corpses. He's using a fire hatchet. He's gonna knock off the... I hit the shutter with the hatchet. Oh, or is he just gonna punch a hole through it? I hit the shutter with the hatchet, breaking into it, stuck the bolt cutter into the crack, and stitched it around, opening up a hole. Then I came face to face with Goda and Kumasawa's corpses once more. And as a result, I learned some new facts. First, they did not die by being hanged. Their feet were solidly on the floor. Okay, interesting. This is good to know. Because I was about to say, if they were hanged, sorry. Yeah, absolutely. I appreciate you watching. It's been, I will probably pass Joe. But I think Joe said he's starting up sometime soon. I'm hoping that I can get a little bit ahead of him so I can actually watch his streams when he plays it. I haven't watched any of... Well, that's a lie. I've watched his very first stream of Umineko, but I haven't seen anything else. So I didn't want... My biggest fear is, even though I don't think he would allow it in his chat, I was a little bit worried about there being spoilers or something. Or anything that would maybe incline me towards thinking something in particular. So, I've been trying to keep away from everything as much as possible. But... So, Goda... and Kumasawa were not killed by being hanged. Sorry, this is like one of my, I've said this before, this is like one of my biggest pet peeves in English. I will never understand why the past tense of someone who's hung themselves, why it's not hung instead of hanged. I'm sure there's some good reason for it. I'm not an English major, but yeah, that's kind of like my same thing, is I'm afraid of the chat, but I love the chat experience at the same time, but I am afraid that I'm going to get spoiled. Because it's not even so much, like, put it this way, I don't think he's going to allow, or that his mods would allow people to just type, like, straight out spoilers, I know that. But people even doing, like, subtle, like, nudges or hints in the right direction is what would scare me more. Like, if he said something, then all of a sudden you see his chat, like, spamming, like, smiles or something, that's what I would be afraid of. I'd be like, oh, fuck. But, their feet were firm on the floor. This maybe, I don't know why this is the first thing that comes to mind, but this is like the Jeffrey Epstein meme, hanging himself in a room that was like 6 feet tall when he's like 5'10". I don't know why that's what comes to mind here. And both of their foreheads showed signs they'd been shot with a gun. Okay. This doesn't necessarily prove anything. I can understand how you could set up this crime scene to look like this, but Kumasawa and Goda would probably have to be complicit in it. We already know that there's a window that you could look through that had a lattice in front of it, and even though the lattice wouldn't allow you to like step inside the thing, so you probably wouldn't be able to like shimmy up through the window. You could still shoot through the window to shoot them. The only thing is they would have to have already put themselves in like a hanging position. So then the question would be like, who would they take orders from that they would listen to? To be put into a near hanging position and then be shot while they were being held in that position to feign that that's what happened. When I thought about what a normal noose was like, the rope seemed considerably on the long side. On top of that, the length was different on each to match the height of the person. In other words, the lengths had been adjusted so that both Goda, who was tall, and Kumasawa, who was short, had their feet solidly but barely on the ground. Also, while the ropes carried both their weights as their heads lolled, both of them had some slack below their knees, which means that they've stood upright, it would be, yeah, so they aren't being hung at all. This meant that if they stood upright with these nooses around their necks, technically you can hang yourself. Yeah, you know, I don't want to get into the logistics of hanging, but I'm pretty sure you could hang yourself in an area, like even with a rope like this. It's just you would have to be willingly, you would have to lift your feet off the floor to do it, but again, I don't think that's what's happening here. You don't necessarily need to like drop from a height or anything, but... In other words, these ropes were a bit unsuitable to hang someone with. The direct cause of death was probably the shot to the head. It was gruesome. The insides were still dripping out from those deep holes, staining their faces a deep red. Then they say, then they were hung up by their necks and left on display. That probably makes the most sense. Episode 4 does seem to be the biggest of like a question mark to me of the events that have happened. I think I have a good grasp on the other 3, but episode 4 definitely seems like a little bit of a wild card. Yeah. Have to see what I get through. A lot of this is going to be like on the fly. I think with episodes like 1, 2, 3, I have like kind of a general idea, like a scaffolding in my head. I don't necessarily have that for episode 4, but we'll see, because this is technically not over yet. But if they were shot with a gun, they would probably have been lying down on the floor. If that had been the case, you wouldn't have been able to tell they were dead by peeking through the window. The mountain of stuff would have gotten in the way, so if they had been lying down, they would have been hidden. To make the deaths of these two known to the rest of us who couldn't get inside, they'd had to hang them like this so we could tell from the outside. Was this to get back at us for thinking that the two of them would surely be safe if we left the key with them? With this, it's gonna be, I'm starting this stream, it will be during this stream. I'm gonna be ripping into my theories basically right after I'm done with this. I don't think the theory stream will be like ultra long. I'm imagining like maybe 2-3 hours. But yeah, it'll probably be once we're done with the tea party and once we're done with the question mark shit, we're just gonna get right into it. I'm gonna try and go over like the big meta things as well as looking at it from multiple interpretations. Yeah. I wonder where the shutter key we gave Goda, which should have ensured their safety, is now. That key was in his trouser pocket, the gardening shed key had been kindly left there, and even the tag was still attached. In other words, the gardening storehouse was a locked room after all. And that gave rise to another question, because this hanging was inexplicable. If they didn't commit suicide, then the nooses were set up by the culprit. It might have been possible to shoot them through the window, but I really can't imagine that someone could have tied the ropes to the beam from the outside, yeah, which means that they probably did it themselves. And on top of that, they would have had to lift up the heavy corpses. There's just no way. In other words, to do all of this, they would have to get inside. I don't think they had to get inside. I think that's wrong. I don't think this is correct. Yeah, I think most of it's just going to be like floundering around. I think that I'm going to be thinking through it as I go, so it depends. Depends a little bit. The bigger thing is that like the actual overarching theory, because I did this when I played Higurashi, is that I went like person by person. I'm probably going to go person by person and apply like a suspect level out of 10 on all of them. And then we'll put that in order of like who I think the culprit might be. Even just sitting through this stream and some of the events that have been happening and thinking about some of the details in the 4th chapter have made me think more about a few particular characters. But at first I want to go through everything with a more like wide-tooth comb and see if there's any just like big glaring inconsistencies or things that jump out at me first. But the key was in Goda's pocket and the shutter was still locked. In other words, the gardening storehouse was a locked room. Goda had said there was only one key for the shutter, but it is possible there was a copy and the culprit was in possession of it. If we were allowed to theorize that there were actually multiple gardening storehouse keys and that Goda just didn't know about them, then this isn't even close to a locked room. But why is it that despite the fact that almost all of the other corpses were shot to death and left almost completely alone, these 2 corpses alone were intentionally hoisted up? I couldn't help but feel something a bit odd about that. I'm pretty sure these 2, I don't want to say they were complicit in the sense that like they helped commit the crimes, but I think these 2 positioned themselves before death and then were killed in such a way to make it seem as though... I think the entire point of these 2 killings is to make it fuck with your head, but like... I don't want to do Occam's razor memes, but there's going to be some certain things that... Because anime games and mystery shit, mystery novels in general, mystery novels just love to never be the most simple explanation. So I'm not going to try to default to a simple explanation. But specifically because it's both servants too, if it was Kinzo or if it was whoever Beatrice is, assuming Beatrice has like a vessel, has like a real person, they would be willing to listen or take an order from them. They would have to. So, we'll see. Assuming that the mystery corpse in the boiler was grandfather, the deaths of 16 people had now been confirmed. There were 18 people on this island. There's me and 16 corpses. Cannon's corpse was the only one I hadn't been able to confirm yet. Vessel in the sense of... I'll get into it in a little bit here. to give a little bite-sized explanation, I think that the witches are more so... You'll have to wait a second, okay? Because I have it... I think that everybody in the game, especially like the women in the game, because it seems like the women in particular, the one that they say more are witches, I think that there is a real-world explanation, and the witches may be just embodied bad emotions. So when we talk about Ava with like Ova, with Ava Beatrice, I don't think that Ava Beatrice was necessarily real. I think that was like a personification of Ava's like anger and her emotions that were made into a person. And when I say vessel, I mean like, if there is, we talk about Beatrice, how she was made to be a homunculus. If we want to believe in the Kinzo story about her being turned into a homunculus, I think it was in episode 2 or 3, and her actually being a human at some time after which she had died and being trapped in a body, I think that Beatrice has a human body somewhere. No, you're all good. It's fine. I mean, this is going to be a stream of a lot of theorizing. The problem is I have, like... I'll say this before I continue. The only thing that I hate about this is I have a few, like, theories that are running in my mind at the same time, and a lot of them are incompatible with each other. And then the only thing that I worry about is that I'm just spraying so wide that, like, no matter what the outcome is, I can be like, ah, yes, I got it. But I think as long as I can describe the process, I'll be happy. But I'm going to continue this, try and get through this shit quickly so we can get to the actual fun theorizing. Cannon's corpse was the only one I hadn't been able to confirm yet. According to Kiri, when he was killed while climbing out of the well, or he was killed while climbing out of the well and fell down into it. So with the well closed up like this, it was impossible to check. Again, this is interesting because we know this means that the well was closed up after which these two had escaped and after most of them had escaped. So I tried shining a flashlight through the bars down into the darkness and the depths of the well, but it seemed that the jet black darkness had no intention of showing me its innermost depths with this inadequate light. It looked like I'd have to break the bars after all. Using the hatchets and things I dragged out of the boiler room and gardening shed, I tried breaking the cover of the well. But the metal bars were extraordinarily sturdy, and breaking them wasn't easy. If I hit them with the hatchet over and over until my hands started feeling weird and eventually gave up on breaking them, or I hit them with the hatchet, see, look at me, I can't even read. I hit them with the hatchet over and over until my hands started feeling weird and eventually gave up on breaking them. It was impossible. If they were at least wood, I might have been able to break them. Use the fucking bolt cutters, bro, what? But this metal. Yeah, there's no way you can slice through metal bars like butter with a human strength. I can't even begin to understand that story about how Cannon cut through the metal bars. She told me that a light like a red laser beam grew out of his arm, and that he used to slice through the metal bars like a knife through butter. Cutting through metal bars like butter. And what's with the red laser beam? Does that mean he snuck in a burner or something? He used that to burn through the bars. Still, just what kind of laser would cut through metal bars like butter? It sounds exactly like the kind of laser beams that show up in those robot anime I loved as a kid. Does stuff like that actually exist? And how did Cannon get that laser beam? As much as I want to ask him, he's already been killed. Plus, even his corpse is down at the bottom of the well beyond this cover. If Cannon managed to slice through those metal bars, I'm sure he could handle this metal cover in a single swing. It kind of feels like the locked room just now with Goda locked inside the gardening storehouse holding the key. Only one person can open the door, but they're locked inside. Also, this is the other thing that's totally fucking pointless about that Goda mystery. They already talked about the fact that, like, Goda and whatever, they have the key on the inside. Oh no, it's a locked room. Brother, he could have just passed the key back out to somebody. They could have opened it. The person could have committed the murder and then reshut the shutter right after. And that 100% covers the entire murder scene. We already know that's how George gave them the key in the first place. There's no reason to believe that they couldn't have done the exact same process in reverse, and then the person that they let in was the one that killed them. But if only I had that power of cannons, I could do something about this cover myself. Just who is Cannon? He couldn't really be an inhuman being capable of using a strange power, right? Even Kiri told me to believe in witches, and I've also met an insane woman calling herself one. Could Cannon possibly be a human on the witch side? Or else the culprit? What the heck? Am I gonna start treating him like the culprit just because I can't find his corpse? He taps on your shoulder, like, boo! Huh! Treating him like the culprit is simply because there's no corpse? And who is that one, or who is the one babbling about the suspicious being innocent? Very well, I couldn't bear having you push all the crimes on Cannon and making that into a human culprit theory. I will guarantee it with the red. Cannon is dead. Among the 5 in Kiri's group, he was the first to die. Okay, this is important to note. Cannon is dead. Among the 5 in Kiri's group, he was the first to die. In short, he was the 9th victim. Okay. And if he was the 9th victim, that's another thing that's important as well, because that tells us... That tells us a little bit about the order of things. Because if we know we have the people that died... I'll look into that in a minute. But we know we had 6 people that died. And they say he's the 9th victim. The 2 who were together were Goda and Kumasawa. So that tells us that these 2 were dead first. But again, I'll wait till we're through all this. I don't want to pause too much until we get through it. Since there's no corpse, I can't say for sure that candidate's dead. So my whispering in red does not reach the PCU, but it did reach you, right? Okay, we're back in the kitchen. At a glance, this appeared to be a mass murder committed using something strange that could only be thought of as magic. Golden threads that attacked through keyholes. No, we even had testimony that something gold had flown around the dining hall during the first 6 murders. The 2 might have been the same weapon. Then there was the locked room murder of the garden shed and the laser beam that could cut metal bars. And that wasn't all. Okay, I'm gonna write this down of like things here. We have golden thread, bars being cut with a laser. What was the other one that he said? There was 3 things. Oh, the lock. The garden house is like the least of the interesting there. And that wasn't all. There was much, much more like the group of goat monsters. Talk of a witch who could create pitfalls just by snapping her fingers, the rabbit-like demons who had fired golden threads. I think there were more, and each and every one of them was ridiculous. I couldn't possibly accept it and was forced to suspect that there was some kind of trick or mistake. But why in the world had everyone spoken with one voice, saying the same thing without contradictions in their testimony? It's not only the magic. Maria's mysterious death, Jessica somehow knowing that George had been killed, the mysterious burnt corpse which I couldn't confirm actually belonged to my piece of shit grandfather, and more and more. All stuff I just don't get. I tilted the bottle and glugged it down noisily. I didn't have a clue what was going on. After dinner last night, we kids were shooed out of the mansion and told to go back to the guest house. And then there was a massacre in the dining hall. Okay, so... Kids were shooed to the guest house prior to the murders in the dining hall. Just gonna keep this so we have a timeline a little bit. I was talking about Kiri and everyone else being captured at the pitfalls. Then Jessica and George were called out to a test or whatever and killed. Kiri's group managed to escape the dungeon somehow, but all of them were killed in the end. And at the very, very end, even Maria was killed, leaving me all alone. In short, I had nothing to do except... Or I had done nothing except be locked up in the guest house. I think in Chapter 4 we're gonna have a lot of value in trying to figure out the order in which people were killed. During that time, a huge incident had occurred and ended before I knew it. What could I call it except incomprehensible? I don't have a clue anymore. Now I'm nothing but a pig. You plan on leaving only me alive? Hurry up and show yourself and come kill me already. I can't be bothered to look for you anymore. You show me your true form yourself. I won't run or hide, so come at me with arrows or bullets or whatever. I hadn't had any sleep since yesterday and I'm tired as all get out. You want to kill me? Be my guest. I decided to return to the guest house and boldly rest on the bed. As I exited the kitchen and passed through the lobby, the portrait of the witch came into view. The big clock did too. And at that very moment, it was exactly midnight. The game is officially over. And the sound of the bell proclaiming that it was midnight rang out. As I listened, I looked up at Beatrice's portrait. Exactly 24 hours ago, I met you. What were you trying to say to me? And where did you go? So who in the world are you? I'm trying to think. What is the game? Let me think. Because everything in this game happened before the midnight of the first night. And then on the 5th, so this is the midnight now going into the 6th, it should be. So who in the world are you? Golden Witch Beatrice. I haven't solved a single one of the riddles surrounding you. Show yourself and fight with me. Then the witch showed herself. Like a guest of honor finally appearing, she showed herself on the landing at the top of the big staircase. Okay. So you finally show yourself. I've been kept bored for an entire day. Yes, I gave you a whole day. Were you able to sufficiently exercise the right of the human side? Yeah. I was bored, so I had a good go at it. Angie was a good piece. Don't you speak Angie's name. She appeared through a miracle and sacrificed herself to give you the tenacity for certain victory. Don't you speak Angie's name. That brutal death was something that you needed. If you hadn't seen that death, you would not have grown serious. Without the wake-up call of Angie's ill-fated future, the tenacity for victory would not have arisen within you. I told you not to speak Angie's name. In short, she was a necessary sacrifice. Otherwise, an anger great enough to kill me would not have been born within you. The rivalry between us cannot be destroyed. Curse that Lady Burncastle. This was no piece. It would be more fitting to call it a trump card. No matter how helpful a piece is, it will never stray from the board. But a trump card, no matter how powerful its effect, is always discarded after its use. Angie truly was a good trump card for you. Don't you speak Angie's name, as he's soy raging. At Battler's outburst of rage, Beato finally stopped talking. You know, I have no more time to spend playing around in a place like this. Even our draws are keeping Angie waiting. I am going to break through you. Take my family. And go back home. I don't have a single second to waste playing witches with you. In that case, I assume you know what must be done. Yeah, I'll beat you down. I'll blast away all witches, magic illusions, and delusions. Alright, let's do this. I won't ever let you trick me again. This game's restarting, you ready? I'll tear apart the witch's veil that conceals the outright lie you are. You talk too much. All you have to do is simply say I will kill you. Yeah. If those are the words you want, I'll say them for you. This is the first and last wish of yours that I'll lend an ear to. I thank you. I will. I will kill you. Oh my god, it's in red. Get it? That means he's gonna do it. Then by all means, let us begin, Battler. Come, it is time for the witch hunt. Try and chase me, try and corner me, try and kill me. I'm expecting a lot from you. Try and show me what your little sister gave you in her last moments. Bring it on. Yeah, Beatrice is a little provoke specialist. Battler's cry burned the world with a white light, and when one's eyes were open to that brilliant light, the two of them could be seen in a rose garden. Who takes the first move? Me. How brave. Hey, first move advantage. You always want to take the first move, you can do it. The rose garden where beautiful rose petals danced, the color of those rose petals was red. Was that a proof, or simply a claim that the two of them facing each other in this beautiful rose garden was the red and only truth? That must be why the roses are red, or because roses are most of the time just red, but that also maybe I'm just, But in the language of flowers, roses are passion, not truth. The flower for truth is a forget-me-not. That flower is blue. I'll pierce through everything with my blue truth from the very beginning of it all. I'll start from the very first game. Okay, this is interesting. So he's going to give me some info from the first game. Very well. Show me your skill. Come. Here I go. Okay, so we're going to get some good info off this. I've already proclaimed it, but I'll say it again. This isn't just for the murder of Dr. Nanjo in the last game. This will tear apart every scene from every game since the beginning. Okay, let's see what this blue truth is, because... Shirmiya... no. Shirmiya Kinzo is already dead, therefore the true number of people on the island is 17. Again, this is one of those things... This is one of those things where I always get, pissed off at him, and I understand it's because it's how the game is set up. But you could word these questions in such a more catch-all way. Like, you could say, somebody on the island is already dead, therefore the true number of the people on the island is 17. Adding an unknown person to fake somebody's identity, it becomes 18 people. Why would you not say that? Now, the only thing is, you could say that, oh, she might force you to make a claim on what particular person it is, and it's okay, sure. But, therefore, the true number, yeah, I hope so. I'm sure there'll be something out of this. True number of people on the island is 17. By adding, sorry, I'm just typing this into my notes, even though I know I already put this at some point, but unknown person X to that, it becomes 18 people. By supposing that this person X exists, oh my god, by supposing that this person X exists, crime is possible, even if all 17 people have alibis. The reason why I don't like this line of questioning that he's going down is that, like I said, it doesn't close enough doors. I was talking about this earlier with, I don't remember what episode it was, but like a Monty Hall problem meme. Or just if you think about solving a mystery, like you have 10 doors in front of you, and one of them actually has the solution behind it. The problem is he's asking a question that might only shut down one door. You could word this phrase in a much better way to close off, like... No, actually, I think it's too specific. I think he overspecified. I think he should have made it more broad. I think he should start broad, and if she forces him to specialize, he should specialize afterwards. He should make it more of a fine point afterwards. But like by invoking Kinzo at the start of this statement and saying Ushirimiya Kinzo is already dead, you're making a claim that she could just break already instantly by going, oh, Kinzo's dead. Or sorry, Kinzo's alive in red. And it's like, okay, now your entire theory is gone, but the rest of what he said could be true. If you remove that first statement, the first clause of Ushirimiya Kinzo is already dead, and you replace that with somebody else, or you just say like somebody that is present on the island is already dead, the rest of it still holds. But the linchpin that it's based on could be wrong, and he might throw away the whole theory, which could still be right, but he gives it off to Kinzo because he's buried into that. But holy fuck, bro, how long is this statement gonna be? By this, even though the number of people reaches 18, it is still possible for culprit X to exist and carry out the crime even if all 18 people seem to have alibis. You can break through all the murders in episode 1 by supposing an unknown person X. Furthermore, it is even possible to explain the mystery of Kinzo's evaporation from the locked room sealed by the receipt by making... Dude, I totally forgot about all that. This is why we're doing the theory stream, because I have all that shit written down. That Kinzo wasn't there from the beginning. Unless Beato countered this with red truth, the witch's illusions of episode 1 would be completely smashed. The blue truth was valid. It was valid, but it might not be true. The wedge of blue truth that Balor had released stabbed right through the top of Beato's left foot. Was the red blood that poured out from there her defense in the red truth? Beato shut one of her eyes tight, enduring the unbearable pain from the wedge of blue truth that denied her. Not bad. But I am still far from denied, far from killed. That is not close to enough. The following games contain mysteries that cannot be explained with that alone, do they not? Which mysteries? In the final stages of the second game, George, Goda, and Shannon barricaded themselves in Natsui's room and were killed. Yeah, that's the only other thing that I was saying, is that, like, I would start vague or start more broad and make her say, you need to specialize. I think they're working on the assumption, or not on the assumption, they're working on the fact that they don't have a very strict, like, rule base. But if she says, like, that's too broad, you need to make a specific claim about it being a given person, then it's like, okay, sure. But this is one of the things that actually I was talking about, that they were killed in Natsui's room, and we saw the thing with Goda trying to lock the door and it springing open. This is actually one of the big things, but the key by which they unlocked Natsui's room was locked up inside the room, and all the remaining keys that could unlock the door were in the hands of Rosa. Even if Culprit X existed, it should be impossible to construct a locked room. One of the things they mentioned in one of the earlier chapters that we don't really know about either is that... I'd have to go back again, this is what the notes are helpful for. I'd have to go back and look, but I know that there was a statement they had made at some point about there potentially being more master keys, just that there was only 5 that they knew about. But I know in the one game she confirmed the total number of master keys. The only thing again with Beatrice and with like the witches in this game, which I'm a little bit hesitant to bite onto, is that I don't almost ever want to take anything she says directly at face value with like her red statements, because she plays semantic games. We caught her in semantic games in chapter 2 of the Chapel Mystery. So I'm not 100% bought in to what she says. I think you kind of have to read between the lines. That's what I don't know. She confirmed the number of master keys in one of the games, and you can try and use that assumption for the other ones, but I don't know if that necessarily holds for each game. So we have to see. The blue edge piercing Beato shook. She was resisting, fighting to push it out. No, that doesn't shake my blue true. The culprit X was in possession of a master key that's not even close to a locked room. No, it was impossible for the culprit to obtain one. All the master keys, yeah, because this is, yeah, it was chapter 2 where she said that it was 5, I'm pretty sure. Okay, so in chapter 2, all master keys were under Rosa's control. That's meaningless if Aunt Rosa was an accomplice to the culprit. Okay, I did not mean to double skip that. So let me put this. So another blue claim. Aunt Rosa handed a key over to culprit X by some method. assisting in the locked room murder. And after that, she retrieved the key by a similar method. Now, the only other thing that I'm wondering too with some of these keys, because we have a lot of mysteries that are based around keys and things of the sort, it makes me wonder, it's going to sound sort of goofy, so I wonder if some of the claims that Beatrice makes, I think a lot of them are only true at the time that she speaks them. What I mean by that, it depends on what claim is being made, but imagine that there was like a key press somewhere on the island, that someone had the ability to take like, you know, something and make a key out of it. Beatrice could make a claim at a certain point in the game and say, oh, there's only X number of keys. Let's say, oh, there's only 4 of that key, or oh, like when she talked about oh, there's only 1 chapel key. But then what happens if somebody got a hold of the chapel key and like pressed a copy of it or something? Now this is like Omega Cope. I don't think this is what's going to be the answer, but I'm just saying like these are things that potentially could be true that aren't entirely ruled out. But you have to do better than that, Beato. I already put forward that theory at the time, so you did. I wonder what she's going to use as the breaker on this. Chapter 3 is the one that I think is the most cut and dried, but for that episode, yeah. But the question is, like, let's say she says there's only 5 sets of master keys. Master keys are sort of hard to complain, or hard to talk about in this game because, let me scroll up here so the music quiets a bit. Because in that chapter in particular, or what we know is that the master keys is basically a key loop that has all the keys on it. And we know that there's certain keys, like the chapel key, that only has, like, oh, that there is only 1 chapel key. But the thing is, like, that might be only true at the time that she speaks it, if that makes sense. Like, if we talk about the chapel in particular, again, I'm not saying this is what happened, I'm just trying to, like, throw shit against the wall, see what sticks. If she says there's only 1 chapel key, that may be true at the moment that she speaks it, but if someone had the ability to copy the keys in such a way, that statement may not necessarily be true at some time in the future if the killer got a hold of the chapel key and made a copy of it. The master keys, probably not so much, because the master key is like a bundle of like however many other keys, because they're not a skeleton key, you know, it's not like 1 key that opens everything. It's like a loop of, you know, some indeterminate number of keys. But specifically for some of the places like the garden storehouse and for the chapel, where we know that these are not things that are included on the master key, these are keys that are separate, it might be important for something like that. And again, this is total copium. I'm just throwing shit against the wall. I don't necessarily think this is true. Just trying to find ways that you could maybe disprove some of these statements. The big thing is the witches are 100% playing like semantic games. All the red statements, they're not necessarily false at times. Some of them might even be 100% true, but they dance around like the real truth of the matter to try and dissuade you or to try and lead you down the wrong path. The wedge that had been gradually losing its brilliance and seemed as though it was about to come out regained its strong blue again thanks to Battler's additional blue truth and dug into Beato again, eating into her foot. Beato let out a moan of anguish at the pain of it. Not yet. This is still nothing. Not yet. Not yet. Continuing on to the third game, the 6 linked locked rooms, the murders of Auntie Rosa and Maria, and the deaths of Dad and the others in the hall, and the murders of Uncle Kraus and Aunt Natsui, all of them, can be explained if we suppose that Aunt Ava was the culprit. Yeah, exactly. That's what I mean. Like, when you look at like a claim like that where she says like Battler's not Asumu's son to try and break it. Well, the thing is, in the initial term that she set out saying that the person has to be a grandson of Kinzo and their name has to be Ushirimiya Battler, both those things were true, but then because Battler had this like mind break where he's like, what the hell, I'm not Asumu's son, who am I? I'm not Battler. And it's like, okay, well, there's gonna be some weird fuckery, but like that's a perfect example of like the semantic game that the witches are playing, because Battler still fitted that, like he still fits that definition even if he is like unsure of his identity. And I think that most of the red is like that, where there is some things that they are saying that is just true. Like, for instance, when she says like, oh, there's only 5 sets of master keys or something in episode 2. It's like, okay, you know, there may not be a lot of wiggle room on that. Maybe that's something that can change at some point. But a lot of the time, especially when they put the like the longer red truths, like specifically that red truth at the end of the 3rd chapter, where Ova was like, this person's dead, this person's dead, this person's dead, this person's dead, this person's dead. Like that again, if we, I'm trying to remember the meme that I said about Hideyoshi not potentially being dead at the given time when it had happened. Again, it's just hard to like, I'd have to go through my notes again to remember specifically what the argument was for that, but I have a funny feeling that Hideyoshi might have been alive. The argument was already won back then, and even that final riddle you proposed through Ova, the murder of Dr. Nanjo can be explained with an 18 unknown person X. That was, yeah, the explanation, because that's how he initially found it. Murder of Dr. Nanjo can be explained with an unknown 18th person. X. God loves his variables. Now I've broken through the entire third game. Can you counter that? Of course. This much is nothing to worry about. In that case, how do you explain George's disappearance from the guest house? I shall add to the red truth. George did not go down the stairs of the guest house. That doesn't mean anything. They already knew that the window in the guest house was silent. I'll put this in the notes, but this proves nothing. If George had an accomplice with him, the person that knew he was going to go out, they could have locked the window behind him. Badler even disproved this in the third game. He said that George left. Yeah, he didn't go out down through the bottom. But somebody could have come up and locked the window afterwards. In the final stages of the third game, George suddenly vanished from the second floor of the guest house. Ava, who had been on the first floor, claimed that no one had come downstairs, but if, as the Blue Truth claimed, she had carried Krauss and Natsui's corpses outside, there was the possibility that George could have secretly gone downstairs during that gap in time and escaped. But by adding on to the red truth, Beato had disproven that. To go outside without going down the staircase to the first floor, he would have to have left by the window, but all the windows were locked from the inside. So what? It's just like you said. He flew out the window, right? Even if he did jump down, you couldn't tell by the grass and it was raining so hard. Any light traces would have disappeared. I will repeat the red truth. Okay, again, this doesn't prove anything. This is a pointless statement. Again, pointless. I'm not even writing down this red statement. This proves nothing. George had no technique by which to lock them. Yeah, he had an accomplice. He had someone to go and lock the door afterwards. Yeah, he already said this during the game. I don't know why you're still throwing this up. I will repeat the blue truth. I said it myself at the time. In that case, everything works out as long as someone locked the window after George escaped through it. Nothing difficult about it. I'm not even going to write that down in my notes because I think I already wrote that at the time. There was like no point to even... It is not enough to resist. Is it not enough? Or is this not enough to resist? Beato couldn't remove the blue wedge that was buried into her foot. The fake witch was burned more and more by the strong blue. I think her big counter is going to be in this chapter, because this has so much unexplained shit in the fourth chapter. In all games up to the third, there is nothing that shakes the blue truth. In that case, the only game that can prove you're a witch is this game, the fourth game. As I have not countered with the red truth, that is indeed the case. I will have to prove witches with only this game. Very well. Hold nothing back. Also, the fact that she doesn't rebuke the blue truth almost tells you that that is what was true in the first three games. But we'll see. She might be like, oh, I was baiting the whole time. There's nothing strange about the 6 murders in the dining hall. She doesn't, but I think she's playing possum a little bit. The 18th person X went wild with a gun and killed everyone. Regarding the pitfalls, see, the problem is he doesn't really have a lot of evidence for half these claims. These feel really desperate. The other ones feel a lot more concrete. Pitfalls truly were hidden there. And it's also possible to explain them with Curie's theory hypothesizing the existence of, okay, I don't know about poison dart, but poison dart shooting device X. He loves to just throw the fucking, you can just say a poison poison dart shooting device. You don't need to add the X there, but which can knock a person out instantly. Okay. Now we go like this. Murders of George. Sorry, I'm just copying all this down. George, Jessica, and those who escaped from the dungeon can also be explained with guns, just like the dining hall. There's nothing strange about it, but I know you've got a counterattack, right? Bring it on. Your greatest sword, this 18-person X, is based on the theory. See, look, and now she's gonna bunk the first thing because she's gonna say Kinzo was alive the whole time. Kinzo was not dead, and it's like, yeah, we already knew that. That's why I don't think the theory is necessarily wrong. I think her application of it is. I knew that you would make that claim. That is why I took Kinzo out of his study. Everyone at the family conference welcomed that Kinzo, did they not? All of those present at the family... Again, okay, this doesn't... This doesn't mean anything. The statement, again, doesn't mean. This doesn't prove anything. Even if we want to, let's say that I agree with Battler's theory about Kinzo being the one that was fake dead, this statement doesn't prove anything. All this is saying is that they acknowledge that the person who had subsumed Kinzo's identity is Kinzo. Not that, like, the fact of the matter that it actually is. Like, this statement right here, all this means is that the person who showed up in the guest hall was convincing enough to pass as Kinzo, not that they actually were. Everybody acknowledged that it was Kinzo because the person passed well enough to be him. But that doesn't mean that it actually was him, in the very same sense that we know that our current guy is not the Battler that was born from Asumu, but he's still Battler. This is what I mean where you say, like, or I don't want to say like semantic games, but the statement saying acknowledged is like a very interesting word to throw in there. Because if she really wanted to disprove this, she could say, and again, I might be content cucking, I might hit space and she'll say it actually was the Ushiro Mio Kinzo that rebuilt the family, blah blah blah, all, like, she might say that. But prior to this point of her not saying anything, this statement does not prove anything. This is just this totally does not disprove any of what Battler has said so far. But grandfather supposedly had been seriously ill, confined to his bed, hovering on the verge of death for ages, right? Even if he was so worn out that he looked like a different person, maybe no one would have paid that any notice. What about that? Even if he was so worn out that he looked like a different person, maybe no one would have paid that any notice. What about that? I'll come back to you with this. Yeah, exactly. This is the exact thing I was just saying. This could be the truth, that this was not... We have true Kinzo, and we have fake Kinzo. If fake Kinzo can convincingly pass for true Kinzo, it doesn't matter. Because they would still assume that it's him. Now, how on earth he was able to, you know, mirror his appearance so well is more of a question. A different person who the relatives mistook for grandfather. And I'll respond with this. Okay, this is interesting. No person would mistake Ushiromiya Kinzo by sight, no matter what the disguise. They would not mistake Ushiromiya Kinzo by sight. Let me think. What is the counter to that statement? No person would mistake Ushiromiya Kinzo by sight, no matter what the disguise. They would not mistake Ushiromiya Kinzo by sight. They acknowledge the existence of Kinzo. We counter that that was a different person who looked exactly like Kinzo. She counters with no person would mistake Kinzo by sight, no matter what they were disguised with. We're gonna get some meme that this is like his secret fucking brother or something, an identical twin. How about this? Now we're just fucking jumping to a totally separate thing. By declaring with the red truth in the second game, the number of master keys was 5, when in the first game the number was more than 5. You changed the premises of the later games. This is kind of what I was saying, that it's not necessarily true that we know that the number of keys or everything is exactly constant from game to game. It might only hold for the very specific game. And then follow this into another blue statement. In the same way, there is a possibility that Kinzo's life or death status was changed for the fourth game. So he's saying that Kinzo was only dead in that game. Therefore, Kinzo's existence in the fourth game does not serve as proof that he existed in the previous games. Okay, so this is a counter to what I was saying earlier, that like, oh, we had people in the other chapters that had seen it. The only thing is, I sort of, don't know if I buy the, I still don't know if I buy onto the Kinzo not being... Therefore, even if we suppose that the 6 murders in the dining hall were carried out by grandfather himself, it doesn't create any contradictions. I'll counter with this. Again, look, this is another fucking weaselly-ass statement. Kinzo's life or death status was the same, or is the same, at the start of each of the 4 games. The setup was not different for the 4th game alone, which means you can at least now lock in whether he was alive or dead at the start of each game. Repetition requested, Kinzo was alive at the start of... Yeah, exactly, so now you can lock in 100% whether he was alive or dead. Decline repetition, I won't answer. I will not respond with the red truth you desire. Okay. Damn it, old woman. I said old woman. Damn. Old man, you're standing in my way. Are you putting yourself on the line to protect Beatrice, your beloved witch? My goddamn granddad wavered in division. Is he trying to be some kind of knight blocking the way between me and Beato? Battler, are you capable of surpassing me? I won't let you reach. I will not let you reach. Not to the heights of the Golden Witch. Oh no. Wahahahahaha. Your shallow logic cannot even surpass me alone. Die. What the fuck? Bro turned into a dragon. Kinzo's jet black cape spread as though it would swallow the world, becoming the snout of a vast black dragon which came at me, trying to swallow me in one mouthful. As I faced the roaring of the black dragon, I calmed my breathing and closed my eyes lightly. I'll swallow you up in a single gulp. Begone, you witless inadequate fool. Shut your trap, you damn undying ghost. So you call me a ghost. You intend to see it through to the end, then? This theory that I'm already dead? That will be your undoing. On the first twilight of the 4th game, the darkness shall swallow you up. Okay, that's interesting that he brought up the black dragon's vast mouth, its snout, its fangs threatened to swallow Battler whole. In that instant, Battler suddenly opened his eyes. Thanks, Beatrice. Your 3rd game was the foothold I needed for my counterattack. What? See you, my old bastard. This is goodbye. I lay out the following theory to demonstrate that I can apply the dead Kinzo hypothesis even to the 4th game. So be it. Come at me with all you have, my descendant. Okay, let's hear what he has to say. In what way could you say that Kinzo was dead? The whole mistaking someone as Kinzo seems like the biggest thing, but who could you have that would be able to convincingly... My theory is that Kinzo's name is passed on... yeah, see. This is the exact same thing as what I was saying with Battler, with having the same name. So if he had, like, a brother, or if you had another person... so he's saying that the next person that becomes the title... This is like some Made in Abyss shit with Bondrewd. Spoilers, I guess, for that. That even if the person dies, although it's a little bit different in this case, that passing on the title not only passes on the title of being the head, but you take on the identity of Kinzo. Meaning that earlier read statement doesn't hold at all, because the person could have been Ushiramiya Kinzo, but that doesn't necessarily mean anything, because that Kinzo is not the Kinzo that we have been told through the course of the game. My theory is that Kinzo's name is passed on as the title of the Ushiramiya family head. Ushiramiya Kinzo was already dead. He passed his name on to someone else. Everyone acknowledged it, and therefore all of those present at the family conference acknowledged the existence of Kinzo. Okay. God, this is such a long... There wasn't even any need for this person to disguise themselves. Yeah, they wouldn't have to, because if they have the exact same name, the earlier red statement is still satisfied. You don't even need a body double. This person to disguise themselves as grandfather. I think that's the... I think what that is that the game is using that Kinzo in place of what person was actually Kinzo, if that makes sense. Again, the narrator is super unreliable, so I don't think we can necessarily show what they... I don't think we can trust what they show us at all times. I think what Battler is saying with the whole acknowledgement thing is that, like, let's say that, like, just to throw out an example, let's say that Kraus got passed on to the title. Battler is saying that with not only... I'm going to do this so that the music isn't so loud. That not only just passing on the title also passes on the name Ushiramiya Kinzo, such that if Kraus became the new leader, he would become Ushiramiya Kinzo. And that would mean that her earlier statement about acknowledging the existence of Ushiramiya Kinzo doesn't necessarily mean anything, because it doesn't necessarily refer to the grandfather, air quote, as we refer to him. It just means they acknowledge that person as Kinzo. So whatever person was Kinzo at that time would still be able to pass for it, if that makes sense. Because everyone recognized the new Kinzo. Therefore, they didn't actually mistake Kinzo by sight. Oops, I did not mean to skip that. Would they still say that they saw Kinzo? Well, yeah, if the name of the person is passed on. Like, let's say that, I'm trying to think of an analogy for this. If you think about it like the person who gets the title passed on to them becomes Kinzo, you can, actually, weirdly, you can kind of think about this like the Pope, right? When the papacy gets passed on from the cardinal to becoming a pope, the cardinal sheds whatever their actual name was. They're no longer like cardinal, whatever their actual name is. They become pope whatever. In that weird, very weird thing, if you want, let's imagine that every pope had the same name, right? Let's say that they were all Pope, I don't know, Pope John or something. When you passed on the title and you say everyone recognizes that person as Pope John could be an insane amount of people. It's just that as soon as you become Pope John, as soon as the title is passed on to you and you become that person, you are acknowledged as that person, even if the underlying fact of the matter is that you are not like the OG day one original Kinzo, if that makes sense, is how I understand it currently. But we don't know how long this person... Because we don't know if the person that became Kinzo, if that necessarily happened right now in this game. In fact, I would almost wager it didn't. Which means it wouldn't be something that had like just happened for them to acknowledge. This could have been something that had happened for a while. This is the final blow. Old geezer, this repetition request is for you. Not one person present had multiple differing names. Okay, this is a very, very good question. I mentioned this earlier about people acting under aliases. Valor asks to confirm that nobody present was operating under multiple names / aliases. I cannot. That is true, actually. I didn't think about that. But I think for the intents and purposes of the game, that's the only other thing that I was mentioning. I get what you're saying. The question is... So I did bring that up at the end of the other prior episode, that every time they had said... To be fair, I don't know if... Again, this is where I don't know how being pedantic necessarily matters. I'm gonna try and get through this first. 1 second. Rest in peace, you old grand bastard. You should thank me. You were finally able to die. This is your requiem. Take it and drop dead. Okay, another blue. Shiro, Mia, Kinzo was already dead. Yeah, poor you. Poor old you. Whenever we find your corpse, it's always completely burnt. Well, I agree with your statement that the repetition request isn't necessarily infallible there, because saying like people operating under multiple names, but I think the only thing is that the servants haven't been operating under, well, again, we don't know. I guess that's the only thing, is it's sort of an impossible question to answer with that one. It'd probably be better to ask that question and not include the servants. Because we know, at least for Shannon and Cannon, they have another name, because we know Seiya, we know that Shannon's other name is Seiya. So it doesn't necessarily mean anything, but he probably could have worded that question better. Okay, that was a gimmick to prevent discovery of the fact that time had passed since your death. So they're saying that they burn the corpse at some indeterminate time in the future to cover up the time of death. And you passed your name onto someone. And no, it's fine. You're good for... You don't need to worry about interrupting. With this theory, even though you are dead, Kinzo can still appear at the family conference. I have a funny feeling this may get... Oh, Jesus Christ. The funny thing is, Beatrice could totally nuke this entire thing by saying that, like, nobody else has taken on Kinzo's name. And that's one of those things where it's like the fact that she doesn't counter it. And given that this is episode 4, right? And we know there's 4 more episodes, obviously she is going to hit us with a counter at some point here. The terrible destructive power. Like, she could disprove this very easily. Obviously there's going to be some line of attack that Battler gets wrong that she's going to disprove, because otherwise the game would end right here. Several dozen blue stakes bored into Kinzo's ghost. Their terrible destructive power would never permit the ghost to recover. Beatrice. Kinzo, thank you for everything. Rest in peace. I will not forget the days I spent with you. And the bitrate on my stream literally spikes to 14,000 the second all the glitter shows up. That's nice. I'm sure the quality dropped to total buns. Dispersing along with the shadow of the black dragon as golden flower petals scattered, Ushirimiya Kinzo became a gold-colored cyclone and disappeared. Even after death, you fought for the sake of the woman you loved. Your love and madness were, without a doubt, the real thing. Battler. No hard feelings. Let the dead sleep. Don't wake them. You are next. And you'll be the last. Byato still couldn't pull out the blue wedge that pierced her foot. Byato realized that she was on the verge of death. I've gone along with you a whole bunch. I think I've more than fulfilled any responsibility to play with you. But it's about time to finish things up. I've got a lonely little sister waiting at home. Me and my family are going home, so let's find the way that she breaks this. And kill me. Then try and kill me. I will not run or hide. At this point, even dodging is beyond my capabilities. Come on, Ushirimiya Battler, as she yells, which I will not copy. You got it. With the 18th person X from the dead Kinzo theory, everything remaining is pierced through. Oh god, it's gonna make me type in blue again. George. See, the problem is he doesn't have enough basis to make these claims in this game. There's so many other lines of attack in the 4th game that I feel like she could live by, like, just getting... Ugh. Just by busting. Like, I mean, if the other 3... I don't know. What I'm trying to word in my head, I guess, without saying it, even though my brain is kind of frying, is that it seems like the first 3 games we have ways that we could describe everything, but it doesn't really help too much for the 4th game when there's so many question marks. And the 5 who escaped from the dungeon and were killed, and the 2 in the gardening shed, and Maria in the end. All of those can be explained with an 18th person X. There's nothing strange at all. This concludes the explanation of the culprit with humans for all games. Beatrice, this here is checkmate. Obviously she's gonna, like, start giggling because he's wrong somewhere. Otherwise, we wouldn't have to play 4 episodes of an answer arc. Several blue stakes were driven into Beatrice, who could not dodge, skewering her. Beato grabbed the stakes, trying to pull them out somehow. He got me. This is so bait. This is you're playing possum. It hurts. This will kill me. If I don't pull these out, I'll die. I don't want pain. I don't want to suffer. With both hands, Beato firmly grasped one of the blue stakes. Good color blue there. Although, interestingly, the blue that Battler speaks is not the same color blue as that, but naturally the power of the blue truth to deny witches burned her hands. Unable even to hide her tears at the pain, Beato howled and tried to pull the stakes out with all her might. If I can't pull these out, I'll die. This is the final counterattack. Then Battler, all my numerous displays of magic, how do you explain those? The very first time they appeared was in the second game when I fixed Maria's pumpkin marshmallow for her. At that time, Rosa definitely witnessed that magic. Certainly Rosa had witnessed gold. Bro, this is the one thing too that I need to know about, and I don't know if they're going to bring it up here. I need to know what the fuck was in that letter that was given to Rosa in the second game. I think it was the second episode. It was the second or the third. I swear to God, she never opened it. I might be totally misremembering, but they gave her a letter. Maria read hers. We never got Rosa's. Rosa had witnessed gold butterflies gathered and fix a marshmallow by the miracle of magic. Rosa alone witnessing it isn't very credible, right? That's why I increased the number of witnesses to the uppermost limit, which is what this last game was all about, the summoning of my minions, and those brutal magical murders. All of them were witnessed by a great many people. That is itself proof that my magic exists. How do you explain that, Ushirimiya Battler? I mean, it'll definitely come back. It is either that I misunderstood and the letter was read and I'm slow, or it's somehow just been buried and not talked about. What? Magic exists because magic exists. I believe the rules of our Braun Tube trial say that kind of argument. I hate the writing sometimes. Again, I said this before, I don't want to get too long on a tirade. Whoever did the translation for this game, there's like putting that 2 times in a row. Come on, you could have used a different word. Magic exists because magic exists. I believe the rules of our Braun Tube trial say that kind of argument doesn't work. You could have just left it as one, right? You could have said, I believe the rules of our Braun Tube trial say that kind of argument doesn't work. You didn't have to say that twice, but it's okay. It's okay. You know what? It's okay. Yes, you're right. No matter who or how many people witness magic, that will never be proof of magic's existence. Whether all the magic you've shown exists or not, I can ignore it at all and explain things with humans. That's my inviolable right. Am I wrong? At those words, the blue stakes let out an even brighter light, repelling my hands away. As I feared, I can't pull them out after all. As Battler is now, even if I cited each individual piece of magic and demanded an explanation for each, he would probably use any means available to him to deny all of them. Not just the marshmallow magic that I showed Rosa, but all of my magical miracles. I can no longer even claim to be a witch without entering into debates about how something like a marshmallow was fixed. I am in such an inferior position that I am forced to fight over trivialities like that. Yeah, that's definitely a benefit. I don't know, as my, I have to hold my one language that I can speak to any degree of proficiency at all very, very tightly. Because it's not so much that it's even bad, like, it's still readable. It's just that there's times where I think, at least for a native speaker, and because I like to do writing in my spare time, and I'm not going to pretend I'm a better writer than this guy, but there's just sometimes things where, like, you could just trim it and make it read a lot cleaner, but it's probably more so on the translation group than maybe the initial writer, so hard to say. It might be impossible for me. I knew this. This was a game without victory from the very beginning, so it was only natural that the day of my defeat would eventually come. Even how I fought Battler. Gonna talk about how she was looking for a way to die, just in order to lose to him. I began these games thinking I might be able to win. Even if I wouldn't be able to win easily, I believe that in a game repeating endlessly, a miracle would eventually occur. After all, I had the absolute determination to win for certain. But now I have completely lost that miracle, and absolute certain determination resides in Battler, leaving me with no miracle for certain. No, perhaps I should say with no miracles or certainty. No victory and no conclusion through a draw. The only resolution permitted is defeat. And until it is given to me, all I can do in this game is continue on resisting. That's right, I'm fighting, only so I can be killed by Battler. I looked into Battler's eyes. It was not me inside them. Reflected in those eyes were the figures of the little sister waiting for his return, and the family he had to bring back to her. He no longer sees me, even as an individual. I mean, this is obviously not the end of the game, so I'm just going to try and find what the combo breaker is here. I still feel like she might be playing possum a little bit. That or somebody else is going to take over the fight against Battler. One of the two. Of course he doesn't. From the very beginning, he has been fighting to deny the individual I am. Yeah, it seems like these are her inner thoughts. Or like internal monologue or whatever. The last game. That last game, rather. That was so much fun. All it was a little bit of a trick. But for even just a short period of time, it felt like we understood each other and it was so much fun. What is your native language? Your English is pretty fucking good. How long have you been speaking, or typing, or knowing English? That's right, I should have settled it right there and then. I should have continued for eternity with Battler totally fooled. But that just wouldn't be any good, would it? That just wouldn't be true victory. Is this checkmate, Beatrice? And this where she laughs and she goes, checkmate, please, little bitch. Run through with several blue stakes, Beato was still in a standing position, skewered to the ground many times over. Unable even to fall over because of this, and still looking up into the sky, she was sewn in place. Her tragic form might have been a fitting end for the cruel witch who had endlessly toyed with 18 people's lives and who had killed constantly for hundreds and thousands of years. Gently, as though someone was mourning for something, rain began to fall. Amid that rain, Beato was exposed to the elements, crucified. Is it over, Beato? There is nothing I can say. No way you're done. You aren't a woman who will let things end with just that, or just this. I was about to say, yeah, you're on really hard mode then. Don't be unreasonable. How can you look at me and think that this isn't over? Hurry up and deliver. Yeah, this is bait. She's baiting. She's playing possum, bro. I remember episode 3. You think I'm gonna forget episode 3 that quickly? Hurry up and deliver the final blow. There's 4 more episodes, Beatrice, okay? I'm not playing this as these episodes release, okay? I know. Just say it with your blue truth. Therefore, witches do not exist. Just say it. With that single blow. Take my last breath away. That's no good. Oh? You asked me to continue subjecting myself to humiliation? It is already settled. Stand up. Our brawl still isn't over. Still, you say? What I see there isn't you losing, you're resigning. Oh, bro, I said it right before he said it. You just resigned, decided that you've had enough. What's wrong with that? Resigning? It still means your victory. You should return to your little sister. Right away. Just abandon me. Right here. Didn't I tell you? I won't run away. And I won't let you get away either. Who are you? And when the world... That's what I want to know, okay? I don't give a fuck about the... Well, I care a little bit about the way the murders were done, but... a little bit of a once bitten, twice shy situation. I can't trust her after that 3rd episode. She actually got me for a little bit in the 3rd episode, and I don't really know why she did get me, but... I'm like... I just can't trust her. Who are you and what in the world was your purpose? You want to know? Why don't you just try your favorite move? What does it matter? Just a fantasy. An illusion. Can't you leave it at that? That's no goddamn good at all. I won't let you run away. I'm going to defeat you. Like hell, I'm going to let you escape. That is true. Technically, resigning isn't total defeat. She could just come back at a given time in the future. Maybe not necessarily for Battler, but for somebody else. I won't let you run back into the darkness of illusions, leaving you all vague like this. I'm going to break through you completely. So on your feet. Don't act all frail like that. You're still hiding several moves. That's what I'm saying. I can tell. Why won't you just let me escape? Dad, Mom, and Angie, all my cousins and all my relatives, and all the servants, all those times you killed them. All those times you toyed with their lives. I will never forget. And I will never forgive your inhumanity. I can still feel Angie's arms on my shoulders. I will not forgive your inhumanity, so I won't let you get away like this. Battler's eyes burn with the flames of hatred. The days when I could earn his passion by appearing frail are now a matter of the distant past. Having been tricked once, Battler will never sympathize with me again. And she goes, okay, fucking pulls all the things out. Never mind the wolves and sheep puzzle. This is like the boy who cried wolf, isn't it? What am I supposed to do? What should I do? I guess fighting endlessly just to avoid admitting defeat isn't endless torture fitting for the Endless Witch. I guess endlessly harassing Battler to avoid giving him victory is part of being the Endless Witch as well. I think part of it is that she doesn't... I think there's a little bit... Actually, I don't know her entire motivation. I think some of it is self-preservation. I think she doesn't want to necessarily keep the fight going. Keeping the fight going runs the risk of her being totally eliminated. Currently, right now, we know that, or at least my current belief, is that magic in this world is an illusion. It's all fake. It's all stuff that, like, you can choose to believe in it, but, like, the real fact of the matter is that it probably doesn't exist. Although Angie at the end of episode 4 maybe is kind of telling me to, like, crow my shelf. But you can kind of think about it like, the way that I'm viewing this, at least in my head, is if it's like a war game, or let's say we have two armies going to war. There's a difference between calling for a retreat and then potentially, like, regrouping versus you going into war and being utterly annihilated. I think she's trying to retreat, whether that means that she would come back and fight Battler again, or whether she would continue doing what she's doing to other people, or keeping, you know, whatever, who knows. But if Battler is able to not only just provide, because all he's really done is prove that the murders have other explanations, but if he can find a way to totally eliminate her identity, to dispel magic entirely, although I don't know if he'll necessarily dispel magic, or if he'll just try to dispel Beatrice in particular. If he can deny her existence in particular, everything goes away. I think she wants to, like, regroup in some sense, although I don't know what for. Because the way that Lambda Delta has this set up, which is part of, like, the bigger meta-narrative, is it seems that there's gonna be some fuckery going on. There was one point that Lambda Delta brought up earlier about how she was the one that was, I guess, endlessly harassing Battler to avoid him giving him victory is part of being the Endless Witch as well. I think it's also that she realized ever since she got chained down that she doesn't really have any way of victory. So she kind of just, like, doesn't want to play the game anymore. But I don't know. It's hard to say. It's so sad. Is this really the endless magic? I've had enough of endlessly being made into a witch's plaything. Yeah, because she's basically at the whims of Lambda Delta. I've had enough. No victory and no conclusion with a draw. In that case, there's only one conclusion that can release me. So right now, what Beatrice is basically doing, and I will not give spoilers because I think it is one of the best shows that you could watch, is Monster. She's kind of doing what Johan's motive was in Monster, which is, like, she's kind of crafting her own perfect suicide. Although the suicide necessarily doesn't mean that she is doing it by her own hands. But realistically, she has two options, right? She can continue to be Lambda Delta's plaything and be forced to continue to play this game for all eternity because she is just a piece in Lambda Delta's game to fight Rika. Or she can continue playing the game and throughout the course of the game try to lead Battler in such a way such that he will win, which will make Lambda Delta lose, but Lambda Delta is also going to try to keep the game going forever, so she's going to have to try to outsmart not only... I don't know how to describe this. She's going to be playing against Battler, but in reality, it's not really that she's against Battler. She's actually against Lambda Delta, but she has to be against Battler convincingly enough such that Lambda Delta does not suspect that she is trying to work with Battler, and she's going to try to get herself defeated because it's the only way that she can release herself from the scenario. Is my understanding of, like, the big meta-narrative. I think well, I don't know if she wanted to be caught necessarily at the beginning, although maybe she didn't. This seems to be kind of a new revelation. I think she wants to be eliminated because it's the only way that she can get out of this. Because right now, I'll save it for the theory thing, but she's just a piece in Lambda Delta's game. Battler and Thing both are. It's a game within a game. And I think she realizes that her piece in the game is to keep the game going forever, and there's no win condition for her. So she doesn't really want to play the game anymore. So I think she needs to find a way to thread the needle of both helping Battler disprove herself without making it obvious that that's what she's doing to Lambda Delta, is my current understanding. Because the real story of this game, even though we are playing the part of Battler versus Beatrice, the real story of this game is Burn Castle versus Lambda Delta, is the actual overarching story. The meta-narrative, if you will. Since the time I descended to the path of witches, since the day I made the contract with demons, was it not promised that tragedy would be my ultimate fate? What's wrong, Golden Witch Beatrice? If you're the ruler of Rokenjima, face your end with appropriate majesty. Lightning. The world was smashed with white. Fitting last moments for the ruler of Rokenjima. Laughing. Ha 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 ha. Still pierced by the blue stakes, Beato faced the rainy sky and let out a laugh. Then she slowly raised her face and fixed her eyes on Battler. Fool. I was considering handing you the victory in praise of your good fight. You shall regret your complacency. Victory isn't something for you to hand over, it's something I'm gonna snatch from you. And don't pretend you're any different. You couldn't accept victory being handed to you on a silver platter when I started saying stuff like maybe it's alright for witches to exist. And that's exactly why you intentionally fell apart like that in the end last time. That's right. That one time, last game, you showed mercy on me. So I'm making us even. Stand. My enemy. My Golden Witch Beatrice. Idiot. You idiot. Ha 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 ha. Simpleton. Don't think you'll ever get another chance. When Beato yelled, the blue stakes that had been piercing her chest blew to bits and disappeared. However, the blue wedge that had pierced her foot at the very beginning did not disappear. You haven't pulled it out yet? You haven't pulled out the blue truth of the 18th person X. I will respond to one of your repetition requests. As you reasoned, Kinzo is already dead at the starting time for all 4 games. Okay, we're getting somewhere. Kinzo is already dead at the starting time for all games. However, in that case, all I need to do is take one person out. Thus far, okay, sorry, I'm writing these down. Thus far, I have been declaring that no more than 18 humans exist on this island. I guess the question is, would she say that like humans are not corpses? I will lower that by 1 for Kinzo. Okay. No more than 17 humans exist on this island. That excludes any 18th person. In short, an 18th person X does not exist. This applies to all games. Interesting. I don't think that really changes a lot of the calculus in my head, but it does make it a little bit more interesting. Doesn't necessarily deny the theory about the title of Kinzo being passed on. I goddamn knew it. You still had some crazy stuff up your sleeve after all. This island only had 17 humans on it, but all this time it's been made to look as if there were 18. And now that we've taken off 1 and brought it down to 17, we've finally reached the correct number. Now the wedge I knocked into you has been removed, we'll have to start the fight over, back from square one. I'm so glad I didn't continue this last night. Holy fuck, man, I would have been up, like, so late. The blue wedge that had sewn Beato in place broke apart. There was no longer anything piercing Beato. The scars on her body had disappeared completely. There, just as Battler had hoped for, stood the imposing figure of the Golden Witch who ruled Rokenjima. Now come, Battler. Once more from the beginning, try to break through everything with the blue truth. I too will no longer play run or hide. If you prove to be good for nothing, then I shall decide this match right here and now. I will make you forever regret not settling for the victory I handed you. Come, starting from the first game. Okay, so now there's almost no point for me to copy all those other blue lines, but right, from the first Twilight of the first game. Okay, so for the first game, there is nothing strange about the murder of the 6 relatives that were found in the gardening shed in the beginning. The crime was possible for any of those who didn't have an alibi. Valid. Continue. What about the next locked room murder with Ava and Hideyoshi? Even the chain was set. Okay, I don't want to get too much because I'm going to cuck my own theory. The chain was set on that room. I'm almost positive the chain was already broken. I'm going to say it now, and I said it back then. I'm pretty sure the chain was already broken and somehow fused back together. Cannon remarked when he was cutting through the chain that it broke far easier than he expected it to, even given how big the bolt cutters were. I'm pretty sure the chain was damaged in some way and was fashioned back together to make it look as though it was put back together. But I don't think it actually was. I think it had already been broken prior. I shall add to the red truth, both deaths were homicides. It is not the case that after the construction of the locked room, one of them committed suicide after murdering the other. Okay, this is important, but it doesn't really change my theory on it. Both deaths, this is also, let me put this in my notes, in reference to Ava and Hideyoshi in the first game. Both deaths were homicides. It is not the case that after the construction of the locked room, one of them committed suicide after murdering the other. Furthermore, the murder was carried out with both the victim and the perpetrator in the same room. No method exists for the perpetrator to commit murder from outside the room. So this part, again, this isn't really too confusing. My exact theory that I just posed is that somehow somebody was able to break into the room. I don't know by what method they broke in initially, but they broke in, they killed the two people, they left, and they refashioned the door, they refashioned the chain together to make it seem as though the chain had been locked the entire time, which is why when Cannon cut it and he said, "Oh my god, it broke really easily," it's because the chain had already been broken prior. So, none of that disproves anything that I just said. Okay. Now the reply to this. God, my notes are going to be so fucking long for this section. I'm just going to click through. Okay, here we go. Suppose that the culprit was a human without an alibi. In other words, the dead. Among the first 6 corpses, there were some made unidentifiable because their faces were smashed. One possible theory is that one was actually a fake corpse and that some culprit, X, killed those two after pretending to be a victim, hiding away. Then, after the locked room murder was constructed, the culprit hid under the bed and waited for all of us to leave. Holy fuck, this is a long rebuttal. I don't think that's correct. Very well, next. This is interesting, like she didn't shut it down right away. Cannon killed in the boiler room, correct? I shall add to the red truth. Okay. Cannon in the boiler. Are they gonna go through all the games here, bro? Holy fuck. All of these survivors have alibis. Let us include the dead as well. In short, no kind of human or dead person on the island could have killed Cannon. It's a very interesting statement. And then the reply to this, if no one could kill him, then he might have been the one to kill, meaning Cannon might have killed himself. Jesus Christ, there's just so much going on. Repetition requested. Cannon did not commit suicide. Beautiful. She finally counters something. Cannon did not commit suicide. One more. Cannon's death was a homicide. Interesting. So it was an accident. But the question is, how would you... fuck, this is such a semantic thing. Beatrice declined to say it was a homicide. My thinking here... I'm gonna right-click for a second. Or not right-click, sorry, I'm gonna scroll up so that the music quiets a bit. The only thing that I don't understand about that is, so we assume that if it's not a homicide, and it's not a suicide... Again, well, actually, to be fair, it's not that it's not a homicide, she's just refusing to say it was. So it could be a homicide. Well, this is the thing, though, is like, I don't know, you get into this weird logic thing where it's like, she could just be playing with food and she could not want to admit it. But I don't really see why she would... If she wanted to prove it was magic, she could say it wasn't a homicide and it wasn't suicide. The other option would be an accident. How would he be killed in such a way that it was an accident? And how would that differ if somebody else caused the accident, or if... This is so interesting. So much of this comes down to, like... I don't know if the game is going to operate in this way, but my thinking being, like, how much of this is operating on, like, our definitions of what homicide means here. Suicide's pretty straightforward. I don't think you can really fuck around with that. But if we're talking about, like, accident, as in Cannon died in an accidental fashion somehow, and if she refuses to admit that it's a homicide, again, with how the Red Truth works, that doesn't necessarily mean it's not a homicide, just that she's refusing to guarantee that it is. So it means that we have no guarantee that it is one or the other. And it's another one of those things that gets confusing, because you would think that if she wanted to confirm that witches are real, you would super easily just hit it with it wasn't a homicide. The only problem is, if you were to confirm that it wasn't a homicide, that leads you down pretty much the only other path, which is that it was an accident. I'll have to come back to this. I just don't want to stall too much. I want to actually get through this fucking tea party. It's so long. Decline to repeat. The refusal still admits the possibility of a homicide, but you've already declared in red that no one could have killed him. In other words, it wasn't a homicide. The same as the linked locked rooms from the third game. Cannon died for a reason that was neither suicide nor homicide. Yeah, so now he's saying, died from an accident. Cannon died for a reason that was neither suicide nor homicide. Though the circumstances are unclear, he died from an accident. It was fashioned to look like a murder after the fact. By the devil's proof, I refuse to explain what kind of blunder could have led to an accidental death where a stake was driven into his chest. Well, he could have, like, tripped while holding it, but, like, I think it's also more likely that he died by accident and it was fashioned after the fact, but... Now that you have borrowed the power of the devil, you are without peer. It is valid. In that case, what about the murders after that in the parlor of Genji, Nanjo, and Kumasawa? Naturally, Maria, who was in the same room, did not kill them. Okay, we already know that. She was facing the wall. And of course, their 3 deaths were a homicide. Dude, the formatting I'm gonna have to do on the Google Docs after this is gonna be such a pain in the ass. I'm gonna have to do it while I'm watching UFC tonight. We can explain it with the one who carried out the murder being some culprit X who used an unidentifiable corpse to disappear. In the first place, their 3 faces were also pulverized. We can explain it with the one who carried out the murder being a culprit X who used an unidentifiable corpse to disappear. In the first place, their 3 faces were also pulverized. It's completely possible that one of them was a body double corpse. Okay, and so the response to this, I guarantee the identity of all unidentified corpses. Therefore, there were no body double tricks. Holy fuck, there's so much. It's not bad, it's just, my lord, it's just much more than I thought it was going to be. Then I can explain it with simultaneous murders. Each of them had a gun. Oh my god, are you serious? You're gonna say this is like a Mexican standoff, but they actually pulled the trigger? 1 second. Oh, Jesus. I'm gonna have to get a drink here in a second. Each of them had a gun. Pointed it at another in a clockwise pattern. This is such a fucking stupid explanation for this. Holy fuck. They blew each other's face off at the same time. After that, Maria collected those guns and hid them. How about that? This seems like a very desperate... What a ridiculous argument. I like it. Then what about Natsui in the end? We don't really... I shall add to the red truth. It was a homicide, okay. I was about to say she could have killed herself. Natsuhi's death was a homicide. Alt-tabbing, it's not tabbing back to where I want to go. There we go. No corpses of unknown identity and all the survivors have alibis. Okay. By trap, okay. Writing it down is a little bit troll for the time being, but it helps when I go back through my notes. Aunt Natsuhi's gun. You can explain it if that was a trap gun built to send a bullet right into the forehead of anyone who tried to hold it up and shoot it. Okay. The bullet from Natsuhi's gun, or the bullet buried into Natsuhi's forehead, poor Natsui, my goat, was not fired from Natsuhi's gun. Oh lord. There is the possibility that Aunt Natsuhi was lured out by that letter of unknown contents, and she was called out into the hall. Then she was forced into standing at a, Jesus Christ, specified location at a specified time, and murdered. She stepped on a pressure plate, man, and an arrow shot her. By some trap X, which used the gun that had been installed there beforehand. This kills me. I love when he just adds random X's on the end to things where he doesn't need to. Like right here where he's saying like some unknown, by some trap X. You could just say by some trap. You wouldn't need to add X. It reminds me of being a kid and being like, or looking at like the Power Rangers or something, and it's like, oh, I have the super ultra mega gun X, like, or you're doing like a fucking 2010 Xbox username like XX Trap Lord XX. Like, it's like, okay, man, you really don't need to do that, but. Splendid. Your absurd arguments even feel pleasurable to me now. I shall surrender the first game to you out of respect. I'm impressed. He really loves to just throw a little X onto something for no good reason, but... The instant Bieto admitted defeat in the first game, the stakes of Blue Truth once again pierce her chest, letting out a terrible sound. This much won't stop me, it's not over yet. Oh my god, they're actually gonna go through every game. Okay, I'm getting a drink, 1 second, holy fuck. Oh, okay. And now we're on to the second game. Holy fuck, this is a long sequence. Taking my glasses off. Straining my eyes a bit. Barely pulled the stake so it had pierced her chest out. But even though there was no hole left behind, it seemed to be a deep wound which let out a massive amount of blood. Okay. Episode 2. I might do the theorizing as we go here because it seems like they're gonna go through every fucking game, but we'll go after everything on top of that. An intense pain of equal measure tormented her. Obito grinned, grinding her teeth, and pushed for the next game to start. I won't feel any sympathy. Just by her existing there, we will be killed and made to suffer over and over, and Angie will be burdened with a future of isolation. It's correct, just by me being here and laughing, the eternal hell will continue. I will not give you back your sister, or to your sister. She can spend 1,000 years crying over the family that is never to return. Bastard. No pity, no mercy. Here goes the second game. I'll start with the first crime. I already saw through the locked room murder where the 6 were killed in the chapel at the time. Someone secretly borrowed Maria's key. Yeah, okay, I'm not gonna go over this unless she counters it. Do I want to write this? I think I do. Fuck. Someone secretly borrowed Maria's key. He did kind of destroy this at the time. Secretly returned it to Maria's bag after the crime was over. From the time Maria received her key to the instant Rosa unsealed the envelope the next day, the key did not pass into anyone's hands. Doesn't that just implicate Rosa? That doesn't really disprove anything. From the time Maria received her key to the instant Rosa unsealed the envelope the next day, key did not pass into anyone's hands. There's a possibility that the door to the chapel had an auto lock, just like Gramps' study. I'm glad I'm writing it down, but my god, it's a lot. In other words, it was unlocked before the crime with a lock, or with a rock, or something. Or something wedged in so that it couldn't close completely. I'm gonna have so much fun formatting this later. Then they gave the key to Maria. Because the lock was automatic, it is possible to make a theory where the key wasn't needed. Okay, and thank you. You made me type all that just to counter it instantly. No door with an auto lock exists outside, or say, other than Kenzo's study. I'm so glad that I can type relatively fast, but holy fuck, this would be forever. The victims locked the door from the inside. One of the 6 was the culprit, and this person killed the other 5, then pretended to be dead. Ooh, I don't know if I buy that. I have to be really good at makeup. The victims locked the door from the inside. We already know they got let into the chapel by whoever Beatrice was at the end. So, pull this up. Ugh. One of the 6 was the culprit. And this person killed the other 5, then pretended to be dead. Okay. 6 were already dead by the time they were discovered. All deaths are homicides. All 6 are pure victims. They did not take part in a mutual murder. There were no simultaneous mutual murders. Well, I mean, the bodies were also carved up pretty bad in that example, so. There existed humans with no alibis at the time. Example, Kumasawa. if we assume that person, or that such a person, killed the 6 and was hiding inside, then there are no problems. Okay. Getting countered insta. There was no one hiding in that chapel. Therefore, your killer hiding in the building locked room scenario does not hold. Ugh. What's wrong? Is that all? It's not so easy once you get to the second game, right? Tremendous exchange of red and blue truth. I do respect her just instantly countering it, at least. The stakes and wedges of blue truth that sent flying darted at Bito one after the other, and one after another, Bito cut them down with her red truth, her red treasured sword, knocking them out of the air. But the blood she had lost from the first game was probably awful. This intense exercise was putting her under even greater strain. I could see her breath growing ragged. That's why I can't hold back now. I'll corner the witch. And this time I'll break through her. Is he gonna go straight to game 3? I'm not done yet. That's no good. That's no goddamn good at all. My twisted logic isn't finished yet. Then what about this? Oh my god. The food they were given had small bombs inside of it. Am I playing Zero Escape? Zero Escape now? Which exploded inside their stomachs. In other words, the crime is possible. Oh look, there it is, Trap X! The details of a bomb they could swallow without noticing, and that could blow open their stomachs, is a devil's proof. I refuse to explain. Based. This is how they died, I refuse to elaborate. What the hell is that? Small bombs. Blah, 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 blah. But Bito failed to knock down the blue wedge as it flew at an angle like a curveball. Just like that, apparently. It let a loud thunk and gouged itself deeply into her left shoulder. However, despite being on the receiving end of it, it seemed she couldn't stop laughing at how much of a curveball it was. No wonder, even I'm amazed at how screwed up this reasoning is. Laugh as much as you want. Is there a problem with it? None. Your wild arguments are my pleasure. And the next, a locked room with Jessica and Cannon. No problems there. Okay, now for Jessica and Cannon. Yeah, it was an amazing theory. So amazing it defies almost all logic. If the culprit was one of the servants, they could have used a master key. It's not even a locked room. And this is going to be the Rosa was in possession of all of them. After that, there was an attack in the servant room from a mystery person who seemed to be Cannon, and Nanjo and Kumasawa were killed, right? I had already declared Cannon dead in red before that. Then who was that Cannon? Is he going to finally say that we don't... If Cannon's... Okay. Moving to Nanjo and Kumasawa being sliced in the servant quarters. If Cannon's death was declared with red, there's no way he was alive. Therefore, there's a chance that it was someone else in a disguise that would make the group that was attacked mistake this person for Cannon. Interesting. Interesting. Sorry, I'm just typing this down. It could also be that the servants were trying to cover for each other, like the ones that lived were in like an alliance of some kind. Oh god, now we're gonna get into this whole... They would never mistakenly think any other person was Cannon. And the counter. Exactly. Oh god. Then, just like the Heredity, of Kinzo's name, it is possible, or sorry, there is a possibility that Cannon's name was inherited by someone. You could suppose that Cannon was killed, a different person assumed his name, and this person attacked them. That seems really stupid, but we'll see. It could be them acknowledging somebody else's canon. Yeah, like that's a much better way to attack it, is to say that you had somebody else who was assuming their name, and then that person would be counted as canon, but not actually. It sounded like a watermelon being squashed rang out, although I still think this is kind of a bit far-fetched. And a blue wedge was buried deep into Beato's left flank. It looked like she felt that one, maybe it hit her in a bad spot. After leaning over and moaning for a while, she laughed it off as though trying to make it seem like no big deal. Yeah, I can tell. That must have hurt like a bitch. Ha! Once again, you set up some human as the culprit as if it were nothing. You truly are gabbling on about things you would never say on the game board in a million years. But it is valid. Your verbal assault tickles me. Such pleasure. This is not pain, it is pleasure. Okay, so she's a little bit of a sadist. Or actually rather a masochist. When Beato howled, the wedge that had pierced her was blasted away, but the wound remained and continued tormenting her with intense pain. You ready? I'll keep going. The blue truth given for the final murders in the second game, the 3 who died in Aunt Natsui's room, should still be valid even with the 18th person X denied. Do you have a counter argument for that in red? If not, the second game is all mine too. No, nothing. It would be no fun at all to fight over such trivial matters. You may have it. You may have the second game. She's just totally baiting for the... She's baiting for the fucking 4th game. The instant she admitted defeat in the second game, this time 2 blue stakes gouged through Beato's chest. She's just letting this shit happen. Yeah, I don't know. Oh my god, my brain is kind of seizing up a little bit on this. There's so much info. I feel like episode 3 was the most clear cut, and this is where she's gonna come out and go, Ava wasn't the killer, and I'm gonna go, oh, wonderful. The witch's lungs were gouged, and her intestines. The witch's face twisted in anguish. Her body twisted as she gasped in pain. I think there is like a non-zero chance that I might not do the theory after this. I don't want to cuck, but this is so much info to process. I almost might come back tomorrow and do just a theory stream, but we will see how I feel at the end of all this, because there is so much shit they are throwing at the wall here. Doesn't hurt. Hurt? No, this just tickles. Ooh, ho, 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 ho. Compared to having your entire body torn to bits and turned into a pile of scrap meat like your sister, that is. I'll make you scrap meat, too. Then you 2 siblings can be all mixed together like ground beef and pork. Ooh, oorah! I'll beat you to death. I'll tear you to bits the same way. Next. The 3rd game. Come on now, where's your energy? This is where I knocked you down to hell. Naturally, as if I could let this wear me out. Yes, it is still far from over. Let us begin the 3rd game, starting with the first 6 linked locker rooms. I already solved this at the time. Don't make me pull up. I'll pull up my image here that I had for the, I had an image that I made and I saved that explained the 3rd thing. So I'm actually going to do this, so the music quiets down for a moment, so I don't have to, like, yell over it, because I know it might not be ultra loud on stream, but it's a lot louder for me because of the way I have the audio set up, which is probably a bad idea that I have it set up this way. So let me open up a window capture here. One moment. Window capture. Put this down here. Okay. And we can see this here now. Now this becomes a little bit more sus because of Kinzo not being Kinzo. But this was the theory that I had at the time. I'll make it bigger for you guys so it's easier to read. I know the text is kind of small. I'd have to go back and go over this, but this was the explanation that I had given at the time. We know that Kinzo was now dead at the start of the game, which means that in any chance whatever I was saying here, it would have to be whatever person is Kinzo, so that becomes a whole nother question entirely. I have to re-go through this, because I still think the process of the murder works. It would then just having to be finding somebody else. I'm gonna have to re-go over this theory. I still think this theory is exactly the same. I think that the body that we find burned up every time is actually Kinzo, like the grandfather, is my current theory. But like they said, for whatever reason, his body is still around for whatever reason. I'll have to go back, like, yeah, I'm almost certainly gonna have to come back tomorrow. But I still generally believe this theory. I think the points follow. It just has to be amended a little bit. Although the only thing is, I have a funny thing, they might just cuck me here and explain it away, but we're gonna find out. If not, we will see. You penetrated this locked room at the time, and by all rights it should have remained that way, but then you went and killed off Kinzo. At the time, I hypothesized that Gramps was the culprit, and that after killing the other 5 and stringing the keys across each room, he constructed his own locked room in the boiler room, where in the middle of carrying out some kind of scheme, he had an accident which resulted in him burning to death in the boiler. Now I've gone and declared that Gramps was already dead, so I've denied my own theory, the irony. However, I gotta find my fucking notes again, because I got so many random ass windows open now. There's no problem. Okay, so he's gonna say, for the 6 linked lock rooms, there are plenty of people who could have committed the crime besides Gramps. All this makes me think is that it was probably one of the servants. You could even claim that the adults who were in the middle of a family conference at the time were all in on it and committed the crime together. Even claim all the family members, all the adults, sorry, all the adults who were in the middle of a family conference at the time were all in on it and committed the crime together. And now Beatrice is gonna say, nope, they were just talking. All 5 master keys were discovered, each in the pocket of one of the servants. The individual room keys were found inside the envelopes. Yes, we already knew this. In short, all keys related to the linked locked rooms were locked inside the linked locked rooms. No key could have been returned from outside the room using a crack on it. Yes, we already know that. Yeah, I'm not writing that shit 'cause we already know. Oh my god. They were killed with poison gas. Even if a key couldn't pass through, gas could, right? The murder was carried out from outside the locked room. Okay. The reply to this is, all of them appeared to have fatal wounds that looked like gunshot wounds. Murdering them from outside the rooms would have been impossible. I shall say more with the red. Okay, I shall say more with the red. When the 5 other than Kinzo were killed, the killer was always in the same room as them. I already declared in red at the time that there were no suicides. Oh, having a seizure. After the murder of each person in their respective rooms, the culprit constructed a linked locked room, and then they placed the chapel key onto grandfather's body after burning it. But there was no way for the culprit to return the key for the last room to the inside of the locked room, which was had to be the chapel, right? But there was no way for the culprit to return the key or the last room to the inside of the locked room. But they did manage to return it. Okay, I gotta close some windows here. Holy fuck, I have too much shit open. It's fucking with my alt tabs. There we go. I only have 4 things open now. But they did manage to return it. How am I alt-tabbing into Chatterino? I didn't even click it. The first person to discover a corpse just had to pretend to find the key and pull it from the corpse's pocket. Hmm. As we all get shot in the head 12 times. She couldn't fully block that blue stake's retort. Pushed back by the blue wedges unleashed one after another, Beato finally failed to block one and once again took a severe wound. As she howled in pain, she pulled out the blue wedge that had pierced her right arm. Beato's entire body had been slashed and pierced with blue wedges, stakes, and blades over and over again, and now her whole body was covered in blood. But even so, Beato grinned, cackled as though she was enjoying it. How could a man who promised to come home to Angie with her parents speak of a theory where those parents are the culprit? Fine by me, that's just fine by me, you know. You can be a big happy family getting their hands dirty with mass murder and return to Angie stained with blood that will never come off. Isn't that perfectly fitting for the survivors of the Witch's Island? Just like that mincemeat Angie, yahahaha. Shut up, I'll kill you, I'll tear you apart. Don't worry about begging for your life, I'll make sure you get the worst kind of death by my very own hands. Yes, you're capable of it, I'm sure. I trust you to give me an end fitting for a witch who has explored the depths of cruelty over 1,000 years. Oh, will it hurt? Will it be hard to bear? Or will it just tickle? Is this supposed to torment me? Come on, Ushirimiya Battler, there are still mysteries left. Beato had already countered my first powerful move, the 18-person X, by making the number of people on the island 17. But just limiting the number of people to 17 doesn't overturn the theory. Exactly, yeah. I can crush most of the murders in the 3rd game with that theory. I may not copy these here, because this might just be shit that I already went over. At the time. My mic is drooping. Once I have to raise it a bit. Blood was dripping from all over the body of the Golden Witch. I was cornering her, and this time completely without mercy. This isn't a game played only to determine a winner and a loser. Yeah, we're not playing around here. Even just playing and fighting like this delays their trip home. In her isolation, Angie will continue to have her heart torn apart by loneliness and sadness. I have to go back to Angie as fast as I can. You're a mess. Are you at death's door? Cackle, cackle. This is still far from affecting me. Something like this merely tickles. Guess I don't need to show you any mercy. You were never going to in the first place. I'm going all out. Just you do. When our roles were reversed, I showed you no mercy, so you should do the same given the chance. Otherwise, I'll call another isolated Angie from a different world, and this time I'll tear off her arms and legs, stick her with a spear and roast her, okay? Shut up. Never again. Not my family, nor my relatives, nor any of the servants. Never again will you make any of them your toys. I've already broken through all the mysteries in the 4th game with the blue truth. The only one left is the very last one from the 3rd game. Only the murder of Dr. Nanjo. Oh, have I already been cornered so far? I'm in a precarious state, aren't I? She's obviously playing possum. She coughed violently, spitting out blood. Her insides had been punched through so many times, it was only natural. Which means that the mystery of Dr. Nanjo's murder is the last line of defense for you being a witch, right? It would seem so. If this is broken, it will mean that all the mysteries have been broken. Unless I counter one of your truths with some new red truth, or present a new mystery, I will die. You don't look like someone who's been back to the edge of the cliff. You still have some kind of hidden pitch up your sleeve, right? Well, I don't know about that. I've already tired of a life too long after 1,000 years. I started to think that it might not be so bad to have this life ended by a worthy adversary like you, who I met at the very end of it all. You can do it, I hope. Do it. Come on, kill me. I'm always the one killing, and I've never had the experience of being killed, huh? killed the 18 of you hundreds of times, but I haven't been killed myself even once. I want to experience it at least once myself. It was a graceless show of bravado, unchanged from before, but blood dripped from her mouth, her once beautiful dress was covered with holes, and blood poured out from all over her body, making her physical appearance look very different from her attitude. Perhaps she was still suffering from the shot she'd taken to the flank. The way she was unconsciously clutching it lacked any trace of elegance. But there's no room for compassion. As long as I feel sympathy for this witch, my family and I won't be released from this place. Until I defeat her, we won't be able to go home. In this world we live in, even people who see each other as enemies can come to understand each other if the situation changes, but absolute evil does exist. That is an evil which brings misfortune by its very existence and is to be spared no compromise. Just by continuing to exist, it is evil. I don't feel sorry for you, just like you don't feel sorry, or you didn't feel sorry for any of us. Well, of course, all of you are just pieces in the game. It's just unbelievably fun to think about which 6 to kill in the beginning, how to kill the next 2, and when I can find whether I can find a much more grotesque way of killing, you see. Come on, Battler, I'll reform a little, so forgive me this time too, and then I'll change the method of killing into something a little better, alright? I listen to how you want them to be killed and in what order, alright? It's so much fun toying with people's lives. I'm sure you could think... Yeah, sorry, I thought you said I'm sure you couldn't. I'm sure you could think of a way to turn Angie into a pile of scrap meat. Much more. Come on, Battler, try to expose the truth of Nanjo's murder. Okay. I'm trying to remember the exact details of it. Nanjo got killed, it sounded like he was shot. I'd have to go back to find my notes about... the end of this. Okay, I'm gonna scroll up here for a second, just so I can look at my notes. I'll finally show my notes. You can see that down here, this is like all the stuff from today, which is gonna be fun to format. But this is literally all the Tea Party, as you can see. So from here all the way down is all the fucking Tea Party. But I'm gonna go back up to here, wherever it is. Okay, no, Ova is still present, so this isn't the end. Okay, here. Bang was heard. The game described the staff extending out and stabbing Nanjo. Still some possibility of a gun, depending on if we go full physical or if we entertain a magical one. This shit is all pointless. Let's scroll up a little bit. Where did Ava get her master key? We know that when Rudolph and Kiri died, it was said that their guns and keys were lost with them. Is it assumed that she picked them up from them? If so, it's odd that it wasn't stated. So there's some possibility that Ava has a master key. Okay. 2 guns and 1 master key have been lost. This is what I stated about their bodies. And this is where I brought up the fact that it's possible that at the time that Ova made the statement of someone being dead, that the person, like that somebody had faked being dead. Because if we assume that Ava is the killer, which seems to be true for episode 3. We follow that Ava was the culprit. Do we believe that she really could have killed Hideyoshi? Maybe. Is there somebody that she attacked and killed who was able to get up, kill Nanjo, then return to where they were and die for real, such that when they actually said... Yeah, they said that Ova she wasn't killed by Jessica for sure, and that Ava and Battler were together, so they had like an alibi for each other. Now the only thing is that this could eventually come back to just the Kinzo theory again. Is you could say that because Ava had been the one to succeed the Ushirimiya family in that episode, that she technically, you wouldn't call her Ava anymore. If we want to talk about the Kinzo name being passed on, if we actually want to bite into that, that would make it clear that you could say Ava wouldn't necessarily mean anything anymore at that point, because from the moment that she succeeded the thing by finding the gold, she wouldn't be Ava anymore. Which again, it starts to get into weird things. Because then when the person said that Kinzo was dead, they're referring to old Kinzo, which doesn't really mean anything. Bang was heard, described magic staff, stabbing Nanjo, possibility of a gun, so I put that here. I was in the room the whole time, both before and after the periods of the crime. Okay, this is the Kiri shit. Here we go. This is the... Finding the Hideyoshi smoking. After Jessica was injured, Ava was constantly under Battler's supervision. Battler is neither culprit nor an accomplice. By this, we can establish a perfect alibi for Ava. I forgot to do this. No life forms other than humans have any connection to this game. All 15 are dead. Jessica has not committed murder. Absolutely no factors other than humans participate in this game board. The one who killed Nanjo was definitely a human, held up a weapon and killed with it. And this once again comes down to the fact is that, Ava would have been operating under Kinzo's name at that point. The only thing that I would have to think is that somebody was fucking around with the time of deaths. The person was killed with a gun. Nanjo was killed with a gun. We know that Ava was the only other person that was in possession of a gun that we knew. Because she killed Battler at the end with a gun. But now, we also have to think about how much... We know that there was 2 guns that was present from the scene with Kiri and Rudolph. So there's a gun that was missing. My current belief is going to be that there was somebody who was not fully dead at the time yet. The only thing is, that's pretty easily... The only question, the only like defeater for that is then going to be, so how was it that the person got up, killed Nanjo, returned, died in the time before nobody noticed, and then Ova confirmed that everybody outside of the people that we know were dead. She did, but my theory at the time was that she confirmed that all 15 are dead, but she confirmed that only 15 were dead at the time of that she made that statement. That doesn't necessarily mean that there was somebody that wasn't alive up until that point. She could have been playing around with the times that people were dead. Saying that they died doesn't necessarily mean anything to us. It could be a timing thing. But I'm not 100% sure on this. I'll see what they say here. I don't know if they're going to answer this. But I won't give in. I'll stop that witch breathing is cold. The end of the 3rd game, they're going to jog my memory here now. It was declared in red that the 4 survivors at that point in the time, Battler, Ava, Jessica, and Nanjo, were all unrelated to Nanjo's murder. So if they throw away the Kinzo angle, and it was also declared that he was murdered directly right before his eyes, all other people had the strongest alibi of having their deaths declared in red. Without using the 18-person X, I have to break through this. Don't stop thinking. Her red doesn't only blind me, it's also supposed to be her weak point. I've somehow got to use it against her. That's right, there's still a gap. This way I can break through it. Beatrice's legend of the witch is over. The others were probably dead. However, the time at which their deaths were declared in red... Oh my god. Please fucking suck me off. I'm sorry. However, the time at which their deaths were declared in red was not the instant Dr. Nanjo died. Strictly speaking, it was in the fight between me and Ava after his corpse was found. Yeah, exactly. This is the same argument that I made. That she mentioned them being dead at a time after the fact when somebody could have also committed the murder, then died, killed themselves, etc. something. To me, it would seem like it would be Hideyoshi. But I'm just saying that because I find it hard to believe that Ava would be able to kill him. But... poor fucking Nanjo, man. Guy gets like no lines and he's like at the center of however many murders. In other words, he dies in every fucking thing, doesn't he? Who was alive at the time that Dr. Nanjo was killed, died before Ova proclaimed that death you can sow through that crack. In other words, it's like this. I think he's just going to say exactly what I said. Oops. The culprit was among those people who were not confirmed dead prior to Ova's declaration of their deaths. And that person had managed to skillfully play dead in the beginning and wait for us to leave them alone. This is the thing, we know almost certainly, I don't know what he's going to say, it is almost certainly going to be one of Kiri, Rudolph, or Hideyoshi. It was almost certainly one of those three. The only reason why I mention that is that the one gun that went missing. It is almost certainly one of those three that killed Nanjo. Also, shout out to Nanjo for apparently being a total ding-dong and not saying, like, no Rudolph, or no Kiri, or no, Hideyoshi, and just saying, like, I have a sick grandchild. Oh! Like, thank you, Nanjo. You really clutched up on that. They made us think that they had died while their death still hadn't been declared in red. They made us think that they had died while their death still hadn't been declared in red. Then they killed Nanjo. And after that died. That's what I'm saying. I don't know how they died. That's the more interesting part in all of this. And after that, they died for some reason. The only thing I could think is if we follow his explanation, if we think it was one of those three people, actually it all makes sense almost in a really twisted way. Let's say, I'm covering my eyes right now, okay? Because my thoughts, I have to put them into words. If we buy the theory that there was a trap of some kind that is set up in the banquet hall, which would explain Natsuhi dying in the first episode, at the end of the first episode by herself. If we buy that that is true, and then on the premise that it is one of the three people, either one of Kiri, Rudolph, or Hideyoshi that killed Nanjo, they would go and they would attack, right? Then, because this is the other thing too, we never went back to the banquet hall after, so we wouldn't have been able to notice if any of the corpses were in a different spot. My theory is that one of those three, I don't know which, I would assume Hideyoshi, but again, question mark on who it is. They went, they killed Nanjo, they returned back, and that timing happens to overlap with whatever trap it is that is set up to go off at that given time. That person was killed in the banquet hall in the same way that Natsuhi died at the end of the first episode, and then that is why they appeared to be dead, and we never went back to the banquet hall because the episode ended before we could go back, which confirms, or would have confirmed if we could have gone back, that the person's body would have been in a different state or in a different location, which would have confirmed which of the three it was, but until then, we can't know. That is my current thinking. That's also only under the assumption that the trap in the banquet hall is a real thing. Then after that, Ova declared their death in red. That theory can explain Dr. Nanjo's murder. When he forcefully asked that question, there was a terrible sound that could only be likened to that of a compressor, and a blue stake as thick as a log appeared from under the earth and skewered the Golden Witch Beato, pulling her up into the air, impaled her. Owie. Yeah, see, that's the only reason why I'm attached onto that. One second, my girlfriend's messaging me. But the fact that she didn't argue about that trap, again, there's no guarantee that that trap is real. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying it necessarily is. But that's a little bit of a something to sit there and be like, huh. There's something going on there. There's something that's in that room. If it's not a trap, there's something that's rigged in some way. I don't know what other word you would use for it. The only problem is the whole, like, she has to counter. The thing that I'm wondering here, okay? And I'll say this before we get to it, is that we don't know exactly. My understanding of how the rules work in this game is that you have red and blue truths. And the way they set up the victory conditions earlier in episode 4, at the start of episode 4, was that Beatrice has to be able to rebuke all of the blue truths, or at least if there is something which they all stand on, if you can pull that rug out from under them, such that the blue truths aren't necessarily true anymore, that she would win. I know there's 4 more arcs after this, okay? So I'm assuming the game, Beatrice, is going to have some way to counter this. Now, because I assume she is going to have some way to counter this, my question that I wonder is, will she have to go through every single blue truth? Or does she just have to, I think she just has to provide one thing that is unexplainable. Because the problem with the red truth, and almost with the blue truth, if this is the way that she can navigate around it, is that the blue truth is not really that much different than a red truth if she doesn't have to answer the specific question. This is also why Battler kind of needs to be a little bit of a debate bro, and he shouldn't be moving so much from point to point. Even though it's kind of good for the whole thing, I think he should be sticking hard on like one point. And I think he should be saying like, look, is there a trap, yes or no? In a blue statement, answer. And force her to answer, instead of keeping like going like on to the next, on to the next, on to the next, on to the next. I think it would be better, of course, the game would end a lot quicker. So, I'm not necessarily, but because the existence of a trap that's rigged in the banquet hall could explain something if it's set up to be around a very particular time. Because that would explain, like I said, the person who killed Nanjo dying and then Natsui dying at the end of the first episode to some rigged trap of some kind. But she might be able to sort of avoid that, because we brought this up earlier at some point in the game, that's kind of the double-edged nature of the red truth, that when she declines to answer a red truth, it's actually more annoying than her giving one. When she gives a red truth, I can go back, whatever episode it was, and I think it was in episode 3 that I said, it's like you're cutting out possibilities. And you can basically do process of elimination. If she was willing to give red truths very easily over and over, you could effectively whittle down everything until there was only one option that was left, assuming that you were able to properly identify like the paths and the doors and the lines of argumentation. The only thing that becomes more difficult is that when she denies a red truth, refuses to answer, you get into a weird superposition where, I shouldn't say superposition, that's not the correct word. We get into a weird half and half where she doesn't necessarily have to, she doesn't necessarily have to answer, but the vagueness of not having to answer doesn't necessarily deny the possibility. It leaves the door open. Although, again, then you have to get into like some clairvoyant mind reading shit where you have to sit there and say like, okay, it's kind of weird. Like, why wouldn't she deny it? Right? You can't force red truths out of her. Yeah, I know that's what he's trying to prove. I guess that's what I mean, is it sort of depends on like the rules around like the blue truth. When I make a blue truth claim, does she have to specifically debunk that whole thing, or does she only have to debunk like the idea behind it, if that makes sense, or like a pillar that it stands on? Because if it was point by point, I feel like this game would be insanely favored in Battler's condition, because he would just start saying like very simple statements like, is there a trap that is rigged in the banquet hall? Yes or no? Or actually, in the form of the blue truth, he would say, there is a, yeah, that's what I mean. Yeah, I think we're on the same wavelength. I think that he's not so much he's trying to build an argument more so than get to the truth of the matter, if that makes sense. Like, he's trying to build up his whole thing and throw out all these explanations, but he's not really, like, trying to get down, like, it's sort of a different, how do I word this? Because we're trying to get to the same destination, but we have different means of getting there. Because I would want to do it much more like a debate, or much more like point by point, to try and like whittle down everything so that you would definitely have like, there'd be no way to go. The problem with his theory is that he's It's funny, he actually had an analogy earlier. Fuck, I forget what it was. But it was like, let's say that you were shooting at like a bullseye or shooting at like a target or something, and you have like a bow and arrow. What he's doing right now is he's taking his entire theory, this big like theory that he has built up, and he's shooting this fucking arrow into like the middle of the night. And he's hoping and he's asking, damn, did I hit the target? Did I hit the target? Did I hit the target? And so now his new thing is that, exactly, see, that's what I mean, right? Like she's not even trying to debate it because she's leaving so much open, because there's probably going to be something that she can hit back with that just like cuts down everything. The problem is right now is I actually think the single arrow tactic is better in some ways if you know, like, so I don't know how to word this. I don't want to get caught on this too long because it's sort of pointless. But let's say that there's a bullseye. You're in a room and you literally can't see, but you have a bow that will automatically refill its arrow every time. And you're shooting into the dark. And you don't know what direction the fucking target is in. You don't know anything about the target. That's what Battler was doing before he had the blue truth. The problem is now is that what I think he should be trying to do is that he can try and make her force a little bit. He can, figure certain things out. My thing is, in that scenario, I think you would want to know. Let's say that you could say, oh, if we were to use it in degrees or in like cardinal directions, the target is north of me. Okay, I know the target is north of me. Or I know, am I facing at the target right now? And they say yes. So now that I know that I'm facing the target, I know that I'm in the right direction. Then you have the option, do you want to do the single arrow strategy? The single arrow strategy really sucks if you're trying to find the target. But if you kind of know where the target is, the barrage strategy really doesn't help you that much because it's casting such a wide net that you have no preciseness. If you shot 100 arrows at the same time in a dark room looking for a target, and the only info you get is the person saying, did you hit the target? Then your next question is going to be, okay, which of the 100 arrows hit the target? Whereas if you do more of the strategy that I'm talking about, where even though it might be less efficient or might not be as quick necessarily, although again, it depends a little bit on your line of reasoning. If you were to shoot the arrow and you're like, did I hit the target? Did I hit the target? Knowing that you're facing the right direction, when you shoot the arrow and you finally hit the target, boom, you know. And like you said, when she's saying like the small bomb part, I don't think anybody thinks there was small bombs inside the food, right? It's goofy. But she doesn't need to even engage with the point. So I don't know. It's a weird thing. Like, without wasting any more time on it, it comes down to the nature of how the blue questions work. Because my understanding was, and let me see if I put this in my notes anywhere. Blue. Let's see. Did I write any notes about the blue? Okay, so I did it actually. I said, I'll pop up my notes here. We can now make blue declarations, and these have to be responded to by the witch before the end of the game. Should they go unexplained, she loses. Blue declarations must deny witches on their own. Okay. So this doesn't really... Should they go unexplained? See, this is very... question mark. I don't know. I think a lot of this just has to do with the vagueness of the blue rules, but I think that Battler is maybe not so much trying to find the exact method by which something has happened. He is just trying to prove it is not magic, which unfortunately I think is not really helping him too much, and if anything, it's causing him more problems because it just gives Beatrice more ability to just say, oh yeah, by the way, it was actually done by this. Oh yeah, by the way, and it's like, okay, fuck. Let's continue now. Ugly tearing sounds rang out one after another, and each time a blue stake or wedge appeared and impaled Beatrice's body. When that finally ended, her tragic form was exposed there, pin-cushioned by more than 10 stakes and wedges all over her body and dripping with blood, dangling and crucified. Jesus Christ. There was none of the dignity of the brutal witch who had sneered at the honor of the dead, and toyed with and killed hundreds of the living. The rain, which had started falling at some point, quietly tormented the crucified witch. As Battler heaved with his breath, or with his breathing, with his breath, he waited for some kind of answer from the Golden Witch. Although it wasn't long, it took the witch at least a little bit of time before she showed any signs of life. It hurts. It hurts. You got what you deserved. Know a portion of the pain of all those you've murdered. Even as he said that, it seemed Battler had lost a little of his forcefulness at this extremely pitiful sight. He couldn't help but avert his eyes from a woman exposed in such a brutal fashion, even if she was his enemy. But even so, unless he destroyed Beatrice, the battle wouldn't end. Battler, I beg you. Huh? Beato let out a sob. It hurts. It really hurts. End it. End it. Even now, I still can't die. It hurts so goddamn much. And I still can't die. What are you asking me to do? End it. Release me from this pain. Beato's expression was a soggy mess of blood and tears. Certainly Battler had been tricked by her at one point, so he could probably have suspected her expression and even her tears of being an act. However, Battler believed those tears. After all, those tears had the red of truth mixed in with them. What do I do? What do I have to do to end your pain? I'm going to lay everything bare. It will be my heart. Your heart. Kill me, Beato. Kill me. Just let me die. And she cries. Were those tears of pain and torment or else? Either way, that pitiful expression was painful for Battler to look at, even after burning with such anger. Quickly, go back to Angie. It's not that I can go back. I'll grant your request in order to stop your pain. Thank you, Battler. I don't know if I trust this still. I do feel a little bit bad for her, because she's actually, like I said, the whole meta-narrative of this game is that she's actually a pawn in this game as well. It's like a game within a game, like it's a fucking Matryoshka doll. But with her last breath, Beato summoned up all her remaining strength and managed to close both of her hands into a fist. A red light began to gather at those fists. Then she lifted her arms as though wishing for something from heaven. I know you can kill me. Everything I am. My heart. Crush it. Pierce it. Okay? The red light around both her arms got stronger and stronger. Please. She got that far into the word, and then her face tilted to the side a bit. Her right arm lost its light and flopped down. But her left arm alone did not lose its light and remained held up towards the heavens. Then, before Battler's eyes, another Beato appeared with a faint form, transparent like a curtain. The crucified Beato had already lost consciousness. However, the newly appeared, faint Beato quietly looked at me, her eyes expressionless, and spoke in an uncharacteristically polite tone. Ushiramiya Battler, I will now kill you. And right now, there is no one other than you on this island. The only one alive on this island is you. Nothing outside the island can interfere. Okay. I think we're finally towards the end of this. End of tea party. Sorry, I'm just putting this in my notes. Ushiramiya Battler. I will now kill you. And right now, there is no one other than you on this island. The only one alive on this island is you. Nothing outside the island can interfere. I understood. This was the only thing left keeping Beatrice, a witch, the final mystery. And Beato was holding it out to me, entreating me to solve her final mystery and kill her. Come on, I'll accept your final mystery. You are all alone on this island. And of course, I am not you. Yet, I am here now, and about to kill you. Like a souped up version of the mystery of Dr. Nanjo's murder. So. that your final question? I wonder if Beatrice herself doesn't even know who she is. Although I doubt it. Who am I? Then Beatrice slowly approached me and held me expressionless. Yeah, I get it, Beato. I'll kill you. Don't worry. Slowly I too held her head, and then my piece left the game board. Okay, holy fuck, what a long tea party, my lord. Oh, Angie died 1998, the fuck? I know she had like the, but... It was a bit odd. I know she was like a witch and she re-entered into the game kind of and then died in the game, so I guess I don't know. Weird. This is telling us the order of the killings too, when it says like 8th, 6th, etc. So we can go back through this and know the murder order after. Okay, so this is the plan. We're gonna do the question mark after this. Then I'm going to leave. I will be back tomorrow, probably earlier than right now. And that will be my big theory stream. I thought today was going to be the theory stream. I didn't think the tea party was going to take this long. Literally 3 hours into the stream, and I didn't even stall it to start playing music or anything. Okay, that's good. I thought this was going to be, like, kind of short. I'm not mad that it's not. I'm so glad I stopped last night when I did, though, because holy fuck. I was so tired, and we were pushing 10 hours at that point. If I would have kept going, dude, it would have been like a 12, 13-hour stream. I would have been zonked at the end. Weird. Wait. Kasumi not dead? What? Kasumi apparently not dead. The fuck? We watched her get killed. Alliance of the Golden Witch. Widge, because I can't speak. Witch. Wait, which witch? Oh, they don't really do that. They finally don't do the little flourish at the end. The bring. I don't know music enough to know what it's actually called in, like, classical music or whatever you want to call it. It'd be interesting if Beatrice doesn't actually know who she is. I have some suspicions about who I think it is. But I'm not going to get into that today. That's for the next time. I'm going to have to find out a way to edit this together. I don't know if I should stitch this on to the end of the other stream. I think I will. Maybe not, though. Maybe I'll just upload this as separate. I'm not sure. Okay, let's do the question mark. I don't know if there's going to be anything for the notes in this part, but we'll see. Hey, unknown fragments. What's my girl Rika up to this time? Scattered over the big bed were cute jelly beans of various colors, and chocolate coins. A fork was stuck into the short cake peeking out of a gift box, and there were decanters with drinks of various colors lined up on the side table. But the venomous color of the drink poured into the glass matched none of the decanters. Someone had probably been playing around mixing them together. The taste aside, that was a lot of fun to do. On top of the fluffy bed were several colorful big pillows stuffed with dreams. Hey, it's Rika and Lambda Delta. And on this big bed that looked like something out of a child's dream world, Burncastle lay face down, and Lambda Delta lay face up, hugging a pillow and relaxing. See, this is the real actual battle that's going on the entire time. Ah, this one was a real rush, wasn't it? I got really anxious when Beato said she'd stop the game. What a rude witch, to start a game of this scale and try to end it by throwing it away. Wasn't Angie a good piece? After Beato ran for it, Angie dragged her back and made her resume the game. It's too bad that she gave Battler a bit too much enthusiasm, though. Because she knew Battler is weak against emotions. No kidding. He looked like he might even go easy on his enemy Beato. Based on the previous game, I was uneasy that he might start to feel compassion for Beato and take the game in an odd direction, Angie was a trump card to get Battler back on track if and when he mistook his goal. In truth, I wanted to have her support him a bit more before playing her out. She really did play and discard herself straight away. What a waste for a piece that required so much preparation. Hehehehe. I'm so glad I shackled her with the rule about not giving her name. Oh, Angie, that is. If I hadn't set that up, the brother-sister tag team would have swallowed Beato up and won in the blink of an eye. I thought it was my chance to apply a lot of pressure at once, but you were watching her so closely that I couldn't make the best use of her. Ah, what a waste of a piece that was. Well, yeah, that piece was super OP. I needed her out of there like yesterday. Well, in the end, she did a good job of preventing the game from being suspended, I guess, and that helps me out too. Her actions ended up matching both of our interests, so in that sense, she really was a wonderful piece. She was an innocent kid like Battler, so it was easy to get her to do as I said. An idiot or an impulsive type, one of these two is always best for a piece, those two. Ah, that piece really could have been so much more. And now she's mincemeat. Hey, let's make hamburgers out of that later on. Oh wait, didn't you like gyoza more? I wonder what little sister tastes like. So funny. Is it really alright for you to be so relaxed? Battler got fired up thanks to Angie. He started going after Beato like a madman, and now the game has taken a big turn to my advantage, I'd say. In fact, didn't Battler just solve almost all the mysteries so far? Huh? Not even close. Almost, yeah. Okay. So, Lambda Delta states almost all of Battler's blue truth is wrong. Beato's wishy, thank you for calling it wishy-washy, it's exactly what it is, it's so fucking wishy-washy red is full of holes. Anyone with half a brain could slip through it easily just by rattling off some random bullshit. Ah, that really ticked me off. If that had been me, I'd made sure to cut down every one of those things with the red. Yeah, but that's kind of how you get cucked, though. Oh, really? I was under the impression that those were all the correct answers. Well, of course, I did have my suspicions about all the stuff to do with swallowing small bombs. In Battler's blue truths, not all of them were even valid. Beato stated clearly that, within the first game, she guarantees the identities of all unidentified corpses. That breaks Battler's reasoning about the culprit of the Eva Hideyoshi locked room murder being someone who used a fake corpse. Okay. Lambda Delta points out that it was impossible for one of the corpses to be the killer in the Eva/Hideyoshi killing in Ep 1 if she guaranteed the identity of all unidentified corpses. Okay. Next, he said that Cannon's death in the boiler room was probably an accident, but what kind of accident could end up with him driving a stake into his own chest? How dumb is that? I'll slice it with that red treasured sword or whatever. Okay. This is nice, though. Well, put it this way. If it wasn't a suicide and it wasn't an accident, Cannon did not die in an accident. For the next one, the murders of the three, including Genji in the parlor, the thought that it was a simultaneous murder where they shot each other, that was fucking stupid. That felt stupid on its face. Genji, Kumasawa, and Nanjo, parlor killings. Okay, so she's giving me a little bit to work with. This is nice. Genji, Kumasawa, and Nanjo were not killers. The final trap X for Natsui's murder is really dumb too. The thing that shot Natsui wasn't a trap. It was a real shooting murder with a gun raised and trigger pulled. Okay, interesting. So, well, I guess I get to fucking eat dick. Thing that... The way that I have it written in my notes from earlier on is that Lambda Delta is the master of Beatrice. So yeah, she just wants this to go on forever. Maybe she doesn't know that whatever we are is witnessing her. I almost wonder if we aren't actually Battler in like the POV of the game. I was thinking this as we were going on. Because like the fact that we can see some of these Tea Party scenes and some of these like question mark scenes, like Battler obviously isn't present here. It makes me wonder if like the POV that we're viewing through isn't actually Battler's. My condolences. Stop that. You mustn't say something like that in red. The kid's trying to make it so that she killed Natsui. Yeah, like that we're like, or we could actually be, I don't know how to describe this. Look, okay, I'm gonna put up a spoiler thing real quick. This is for the third Zero Escape game, Zero Time Dilemma, okay? Just as an aside. most people probably don't care. To be honest, it's probably the worst game in the series out of the 3, so, you know, whatever. But one of the things that happens in Zero Time Dilemma at the end is you find out that one of the 3 groups of people, it's like a escape room kind of thing, don't know how to describe, escape room thing ran by a mastermind. You find out that the one group of people that you thought was actually 3 people was actually 4, and the entire time that you were playing through that whole section, you were actually viewing through the perspective of the 4th party member in that group, but it was never revealed to you until way later, when there's like a certain puzzle that you can enter the name of somebody to kill in that group, and you get the choice to enter who to shoot. Like you have like a crossbow and you get to shoot somebody, and if you type in the name of the guy who you don't actually know yet, at that point in the game, it reveals to you that there actually is a 4th person that's a member of that group that they kept secret from you just without telling you for the whole game. Now, I'm not saying that we're somebody that's present in the game or anything. I think if we are anything, we are just like a consciousness that is outside of the game that is observing anything. But like I said, I do find it weird that we are seeing what is going on with, like the question mark things when, like, Battler isn't here. But yeah. But yeah, I would say 999 was definitely the best of the Zero Escape trilogy. I thought that the second game was pretty good, but I thought that it was way too long, and I thought that the story was kind of goofy at the end. I think 999 was probably the best of the 3. I don't know. I played 999 literally 5 years ago at the start of COVID, so I don't know if I would still view it the same way. I might even replay it sometime in my own personal time to see, but let's continue this. You mustn't say something like that in red. That kid's trying to make it so that she killed Natsui by bouncing Natsui's bullet back at her with magic. Oh ho ho ho, oopsie, you're right, I forgot. Even his blue truths for the second game were too naive. Okay, so this is for episode 1 stuff in the question mark. Episode 1. Episode 2. When the 6 were murdered in the chapel, the culprit was inside the chapel. Oops. That guy tries to explain every little thing with Trap X. What the heck is Trap X? Some weird mystery novel cliche? And in the incident where Nanjo and Kumasawa were killed in the serpent room, it's ludicrous to say that someone inherited Kanon's name. Okay. The only one who can go by the name of Kanon is the person himself. No other human adopts that name. Can adopt that name. Okay. Thank you, Lambda Delta. I'm starting to wonder whose side you're really on. And that theory about borrowing the master key from Rosa for Natsui's room is also worthless. After the master keys came into Rosa's control, never did any of them leave her hands. I'm not necessarily entirely against it. I kind of agree with you in a sense that I would prefer that it was done between Beatrice and Battler, but I think the reason why they do this is that it would be almost, I don't want to say almost impossible, but let's say you're in a position like us where we're trying to theorize what's going to happen before playing the answer arcs. I think that you would have so much open space, it would be really hard to narrow it down. And not to say that you couldn't, but except for the time, but I do agree with you in essence that I do kind of wish it was still stuck between those two, but except for the time she lent one to Battler to unlock Natsuhi's room. I could go on, but this is enough just for a quick look, I guess. Quick look, you've just denied Battler's blue truth for the first and second games across the board. My, what a thing. Battler would faint if he heard that. See? Pita wasn't cornered at all. I always thought she was a pretty good actress. I'm sure the plan is to make it look like she got cornered in this game, and then sometime next game, swish, she'll slice it in half with a single red stroke and make Battler's eyes pop out. And then I'm sure she'll say it with a huge grin on her face, a witch is never in trouble. Giggle, giggle, giggle. And that whole tragic feeling as though Beato was getting cornered was all an act. Obviously. She really is a great actress. Even though she wasn't cornered at all, it felt like a last episode climax that put everyone else to shame. She's totally the winner for the best supporting actress this year. Oh, but of course, I'm the star. Or would it be you, Byrne? At the end, she said things like, kill me, and laid out a big riddle. Wasn't that her last stand with Beato to be finished for good if that riddle was solved? No way you were tricked too, Byrne. That wasn't even close to a last stand. Beato still has some hellishly brutal moves she's keeping hidden. When she stuck out both arms to give the final riddle, did you notice how she brought her right arm back down? Now that you mention it. So that's what that meant. Sure is. She still had plenty of hidden moves left, and none of the mysteries have been... That wasn't... I'm gonna put this in the quotes. I don't really know what this... Excuse me. Excuse me again. It's a very interesting thing to say. That wasn't even close to a last stand. Thank you. Beato still has some hellishly brutal moves she's keeping hidden. When she stuck out both arms to give the final riddle, did you notice how she brought her right arm back down? I'm gonna keep that note here because it just seems like an odd thing to... The tension, or that tension, as though she'd been completely seen through. And it was like, tune in next time for the final episode. She truly is a genius at acting. I can't wait to see her knock Battler back down to rock bottom. Dude, I love that episode of SpongeBob. She's really taken to that north wind and the sun strategy from the last game, I think. I bet Battler will sympathize with Beato again and fall for it completely. A woman's single tear can trick a man, after all. Now that's value, don't you think? I wonder if Battler will get caught by that move again. I must do my part too and light a fire under Battler to never feel sympathy for her again, although Angie's mincemeat seems to have done that pretty well for the time being. A power-up from an Angie-flavored hamburger? Oh, ho, 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 ho. Of course, I won't be beaten either. I'll be giving Beato my full support so she can make enough of a comeback to compete with Battler. She won't lose, Beato. I mean, I've threatened her with a wonderful penalty if she does. Your penalties are genuinely no joke, so you should go a little easy. I've decided what to do next time I get to give you a penalty burn. Wanna hear? No. My goat, Rika. Come on, listen! Okay, here we go. I'll lock you in a wonderful, wonderful castle. The castle will be surrounded by pure white castle walls 12 kilometers to a side, with a height of 10 meters. No magic and no cheating allowed. That's really not something you can jump over, right? 1,440,000,000 meters cubed. You can stop there. I already know what you're gonna say. And that place will start getting buried with gems one every day. And I'll lock you in it until the castle walls are packed with them, and you've been buried to death with gems. Isn't that a wonderful romantic penalty? I'll let you multiply the length of the walls by 5 if you make the height 1/10 its current height, and you can even shut me in it right now. Really? That would make it 3,600,000,000 meters cubed, you know? The penalty would take more than twice as long. Ah, you'll be my prisoner for such a long time. I love you, Byrne. I really love you. Lambda Delta playfully clung to Byrne Castle, who yawned, looking bored as she stroked Lambda Delta under the chin as though playing with a cat. She kind of looks like Satoko from Higurashi, Lambda Delta that is. So you're betting on Battler to win, and I'm betting on the two of them getting draws forever. Isn't anyone going to bet on Beato to win? Won't be me. Her chances of winning are 0. Oh ho ho ho! It must hurt to be told by the Witch of Miracles that there's 0 chance of a miracle. I wouldn't bet on her either, of course. For certain. It must hurt to be told by the Witch of Certainty that it's certainly no good as well. Unusually for them, they giggled together. I wonder what kind of conclusion this game's gonna have. Now that, at least, we can't predict. That's why it's fun, after all. I won't allow any more escaping or suspending the game. I'll make them continue the game for certain, and I won't let them run away. I can't even imagine how things are going to unfold now, but I do know one way it's certainly not going to end. At the very least, we know it won't end with Beato's victory. I almost hope she fucking wins in spite of everything, but that would also mean a bad end for us, but... I mean, think about it. Neither you nor I are betting on Beato to come out as the winner. Which means, if it looks like Beato is going to win, she'll be making enemies of both of us great witches. Pretty much. Our powers are most in balance only when things are somewhere between a draw and Battler's advantage. If it tips too much in Beato's favor, both of us will align along the same vector and drag Beato back. So the instant Beato finds herself on top, she'll have both of us as enemies to deal with. Hee. A common front with Byrne sounds fun. Imagine that Battler enters into some union. Mariage Sorcière redone where he joins forces with Beato so they can flip the fucking game board and twist it on these two, although I don't think Rika's evil, but maybe. Thanks. But I'm not taking a Conpaito? I'm not, Conpaito? Candy bath with you. Aw, but I thought we could take a Conpaito shower together, while I cover you all over with melted marshmallows. That poor girl. She's a living toy. A doll that you caught so that you could play with me. I'm good at playing with dolls. I really can't play with them well, you know. I'm proud of being able to get hundreds of years of playtime out of a single toy without getting tired of it. You're her ally at some times and oppose her at others, toying with her forever. I feel sorry for her. That kid is our doll now. Excuse me. Should have muted the sniffle. That's right. That kid is our doll. No end is prepared for her except the ones the two of us wish for. So I can say for sure that this can only end with either an eternal draw because of me, or Beato being defeated and destroyed because of you. As far as this game ending with Beato's victory goes, I will proclaim it as the Witch of Miracles. Then I'll proclaim it as the Witch of Certainty. Beato certainly cannot win, and there will be absolutely no miracles. That almost makes me feel even more convinced that she will find a way to come out on top. The fact that they would say that makes me almost, like, more convinced. Are we on a fucking operating table with a beep, beep, beep? Can I skip this one? I couldn't skip the last time. This went on for a long time last time. But I'm pretty sure you actually have to listen to it. I'm gonna lower this down. Just because it's doing its thing. Ugh. Yeah, there's definitely like a game within a game that's going on, like a Matryoshka doll of games. We have Battler and Beatrice that are fighting against each other. Rika is trying to make Battler win, presumably, although question mark. Oh no, Daisuke is fucking Battler? Really? Isn't that the same dude that voices fucking Jotaro? Jotaro! But there's an interesting thing here. Assuming that everybody's intentions can be told and that we believe what they're being told. They haven't been lied to us, which is not very likely, but all Lambda Delta wants is this game to go on forever. Lambda Delta has enslaved Beatrice on her side because she wants Rika to grow bored and basically die. And I don't really know. I don't know for what reason Rika would be on Battler's side. Other than just to oppose Lambda Delta, because it's what Lambda Delta wants, but it seems a little hard to place, I guess. Let me save my notes so in case something crashes I don't lose it. So yeah, this is going to be the plan. I didn't think this was going to take this long. I will come back tomorrow, probably in the afternoon, probably earlier than I started today. I started at 4 p.m. my time today. Probably be back sometime in the afternoon. I'd say like 2 p.m.-ish. Maybe noon to 2 p.m., somewhere in that range, we'll say. And we will do our theorizing. I'm going to upload the notes to the note archive that I have right now. I'm also going to go through and format them, just so that it's easier to read for everybody. And I think that's about it. I still do not understand why you can't skip this. I feel kind of bad, but it's like I would rather literally rather shoot myself in the head than fucking watch credits of almost anything. I'm so glad I cut when I did last night. I was like so tired. I was like fumbling words. I was like, I'm just going to bed. Fuck this. I'm so glad I did not stay up because the fact that this took like 3 more hours to get through. Like holy shit, this is insanely long. That chapter in particular, I should say that episode rather. That episode had so many long chapters. Like there was the one chapter whenever they were running from what do you call it? The goats or whatever, and they were running back to the main mansion. Holy shit. My top 3 characters. Ooh, that's a good one. Let me go to the menu so I can look at all of them. Turn the volume back up now that this is over. I did like to do an MVP for each. So this is the thing. I'm not going to say these are my favorite characters right off the bat. I will. Okay, fuck you, interrupting me there. My MVP for each episode will go through. New elements added to the title screen, and a new game board has been unlocked. When it says the new episode, I saw that when we were doing episode selection, it said episodes 5 through 8. ported from PlayStation 3 by the Umineko project. Yep, that's what I'm playing on. Shout out to Chrono Trig and T-Kaz and Lazarillo and Shiro Kaisen and Squirrel Lord and Crazy SJD89 and K//Eternal and Crystal Weaver and Pants Goblin and Janpu and Dormer. Although what I'm gonna say is whoever the fuck translated this game, man, some of your translations, maybe you shouldn't have done it so literally. But first, MVP for each episode, and then I'll go to my 3 favorite characters. MVP for episode 1, absolutely Natsui. MVP for 2 is tough. I think 2 is probably like the toughest one to pick. Episode 4 is pretty easy. I would also say Angie. I think she was the highlight of the episode. Episode 3, this is sort of a cheating answer. I said this last time. I feel like it's sort of a cheat to pick her because she's such a prime character in every episode. But I feel like Beatrice was the highlight of episode 3. Like, that was like the Beatrice episode. And for episode 2, I would lean towards Rosa off the top of my head. Can I skip this? No, I can't. Now, to think about who my top 3 characters are overall, and not just who I thought was the standout for the episode. 2011 to 2020. Wow. Can I see the character screen, please, so I can look at all the characters? Please. Wonderful. Can I... Huh. I do want to check something. Yeah, it's weird that it shows these all together. That it doesn't show them as individual. Interesting. Check if there's any tips for episode 4. I doubt there's really... Okay. I'll read these. Mariage Sorcière, a witch's alliance formed by Lady Maria, the Witch of Origins, and Lady Beatrice, the Endless Witch. The two of them created a groundbreaking new system of magic, thereby granting Beatrice, whose magical power had begun to decline, immense new magical power. You could probably say that it was through the formation of this alliance that Beatrice gained the endless power in the true sense. Article 1 requires members to accept each other as witches and respect each other's magic. At one point, young Angie was invited to the alliance, but she was later excommunicated. Now, I did want to say, I did find there was one part of episode 4 that I didn't particularly understand, which had to do with the Mariage Sorcière, which was that... I'm going to lay this out, because I understand it in principle, but I don't necessarily understand it in the explanation, which is, we know that Angie got invited to Mariage Sorcière when she was at St. Lucia Academy, because she had Maria's grimoire after the accident had happened. She was reading the grimoire, she learned about magic through the grimoire, and she got invited to Mariage Sorcière through that. The only thing that I find confusing is that it's kind of a bootstrap paradox that they created, because Angie, as a part of Mariage Sorcière, when she leaves in the St. Lucia in the future, because this is in episode 3's timeline, 12 years in the future or some amount of time after it was over, we saw it, she basically disses magic whenever they won't, the people won't help her. The Seven Stakes won't help her when she's having that scene in the academy when all the people are picking on her. And because of her rejecting magic, rejecting everything, blah blah blah, trying to destroy everybody, it later creates doubt in Maria, but the only thing that's confusing is the Maria that it creates doubt in is the one that would have existed like 12 years prior. Now, I understand if you say that the Mariage Sorcière is something that's sort of beyond time. I guess that's kind of an explanation. The only thing that I find a little bit odd about it is how exactly... No, you can intervene. I'm just confused how Angie leaving the Mariage Sorcière in the future made the Mariage Sorcière twist from being magic of good to magic of evil in the past. Like, unless I have a misplacement of the timeline of events, Angie didn't ever gain even the ability to look into magic until she got the grimoire after Maria was dead. Unless they are saying that Angie, when she was very young, even younger, but that would be that Angie would had to have been age 6 or younger. But the scene that we saw of her rejecting magic was when she was in St. Lucia. And this was already after the episode 3 events had unfolded. Normally I would agree with you on that. Like I follow that you would say that she was excommunicated before, but none of the scenes that we saw, like the beginning of her excommunication that we saw had to do with what happened. How do I word this? The problem is I can't search this up. It's not really that big of a deal. It's not like when everything is over and I'm done the game, I'll probably go back and look this up if I can't find somebody that would explain it without spoils, but because it might be important later on so I can understand why maybe they wouldn't. But because like my current understanding is like you're saying that in 1986, Maria already twists Mariage Sorcière into being evil before the events of... Okay, thank you, Driver Easy, for popping up on my computer when nobody asked you to open. During the events of 1986, we already know prior to that, whenever Rosa destroyed Sakutaro, was whenever Mariage Sorcière went evil, basically. And there is some implication that Mariage Sorcière twisting into something that was evil had something to do with the events of the island happening the way that they did on that day. The only thing I don't understand is how Angie in the future, again, unless this alliance exists somehow like outside of time, which again is a little bit of like a cop-out, which I don't particularly like. Unless that's an explanation, I just don't understand, unless like you said it happened before and it was not shown. The inciting incident that made Angie reject magic was a few years prior to Angie whenever she repicked up magic, and it was her being mad at the Seven Stakes and Sakutaro and Maria for not stepping in and doing something to help her in St. Lucia. But my understanding is that St. Lucia was like a secondary school, and Angie was only in it after 1986. So I just don't understand how the timeline fits, like I said, unless there's some weird like multiple timeline shit. Unless I'm forgetting that part, the only thing that I would have a problem with is that why that wouldn't be shown in game. It just seems like a very silly thing to like not. Mariage Sorcière. Oh, I have it in my notes right here, actually. Look. Angie states that she was entered into Mariage Sorcière in April of 1987. She joined Mariage Sorcière after Maria was already dead. The event happened in 86, and I actually remember this specifically because she mentioned, she said it wasn't even 6 months later. Angie would have been 7-ish years old or something? Or maybe not even, I guess it depends on her birthday. I have a theory about that code, by the way, too, which we'll get back to. But I don't want to talk about that today, that'll be for tomorrow. I want to iron out my thoughts and everything. But there's like some fuckery that's going on. Because if Angie joined Mariage Sorcière, you obviously have to join it first before you can be excommunicated, and she joined after Maria died. I'll rack my brain about this a little bit, but there's definitely some fuckery that's going on with the Mariage Sorcière that didn't make sense to me. But let's read the rest of these tips here. Let me save this too. Oh, is that actually what it is? That would make a lot more sense. Okay. I appreciate that. That would make a lot more sense. So she rejected Mariage Sorcière initially. and then was allowed back in. And all of this is because I don't play with voice acting. Wonderful. You know, I was worried at some point that something like that was going to come up, that there was going to be like something that you would only understand if you were playing with voice acting. Did I delete that last message by accident? Oh no. I don't know if there's anything else to do with... Okay. Began only with Beatrice and Maria. Okay. Yeah, that makes sense then. So is the timeline, without spoils, is the timeline supposed to be that before the events of what happened in 86, she denied joining, or she rejected magic, and then after Sakutaro's death, that was like the seed that allowed her to have that happen, and then despite Angie joining later, Mariage Sorcière was already twisted at the time that Angie had joined? Duh. Fuck, yeah, the Angie parts really are confusing. Also, don't answer anything if it's spoilers, but I appreciate it. Okay, that makes sense. Thank you, I appreciate that. So it was already twisted by the time. Okay. Like I said, I'll look up this shit later once I've actually like beat the game or past the point where any of this is important, but... Okay, let's read the rest of these fucking tips so I don't fuck around anymore. A foundation upon which to create magic, in particular, refers to a system by whose shared usage magic powers can be gained without conscious effort. You could say that writing down their own system of magic and leaving it to future generations is one of a witch's life works. However, systems of terrific magic power are correspondingly difficult to comprehend, and shared usage of them is troublesome. As a result, none will appear to bear the burden. If a system's magical power is simple, there will likely be no difficulty sharing it, but as a result, the system will be reduced to having no greater effect than a simple good luck charm. Okay, so all this is saying is that the more complex a magic is, the more difficult it is to understand, meaning that the best magic are ones that can only be understood by those who have magic that are unique to themselves. So... if you create a magic that can be easily disseminated, by virtue you are making a magic that will be weaker. Okay. Grimoire is that into which a system of magic is written down and transmitted to later generations. The most famous grimoire in the world today has a 2,000-year-old history. It is still in circulation and is said to be continuing to acquire new alliance members even now. Is this supposed to be a reference to Christianity? Is this what we're getting at here? We call him... Jesus was a witch? Is forbidden to speak the true name of that grimoire, and it is simply called the book. I think it literally is. It's supposed to be like a meme. I guess it couldn't necessarily be the Bible. It could be any of the initial Abrahamic things, but... As a witch, Beatrice holds the two titles of Endless and Golden. Because these are originally titles from separate magic systems, it can be said that she possesses two systems. The Endless Witch has its foundations in endless creation and is a root of her unmatched endless magical power. The Golden Witch has its foundation in magic realization and her magical power to make the precious metals of fantasy manifest in reality. Am I reading this wrong? And her magical power to make the precious metals of fantasy manifest in reality gives the miracle of manifestation to all faint forms of magic. The two of these were polished even further through Mariage Sorcière, elevating them to a system of magic called Endless Realization. In that sense, she should now be called neither the Endless nor the Golden Witch, but by a new title that is a fusion of the two. The Gold End Witch. The definition of a witch is vague, but the most accepted theory is that one is a witch at the point when they gain a power surpassing humans and are able to use it freely. And the world, or possibly fragments, in which that can be freely used is called their territory. Most witches cannot leave their territory, but those who are capable of transcending its boundary at will and wandering the fragments are called voyagers. We already knew that with these two. That's interesting to say. So you have like a domain that you can cast under. This also means that a witch technically is not... This is weird though, because the way that the game had it described, and maybe I'm stupid, and maybe this is me being misogynistic. My understanding is that to be a witch you have to be female, because even in some of the other things, it said that Kinzo was a mage, not a witch. Maybe it doesn't particularly matter. You could just interchange witch for mage, but it could also be that witches are maybe more powerful than mages. You never know. I doubt they expand on that too much. Worlds of different fates and circumstances are called fragments, and witches who are able to cross the ocean of endless fragments are called voyagers. It is another name for a high order, high level, witch, and witches who are unable to leave their territories cannot compare with their power. However, perhaps because they do not have specific territories, their personal values are unstable, and it is easy for their souls to become faint. As a result, it is not rare for voyagers to disappear like scraps of seaweed in the ocean of fragments. Creators are sacred beings who can create one out of the sea of nothingness. They can give birth to one from zero, give birth to the endless, and then return it to zero again in a flash. They are freed from all restrictions, and the Voyagers sometimes even call them gods. In that sense, perhaps the Witch of Origins, Maria, who is promised to become a creator, may be called a chosen one. Voyagers fear that the end of their own journey is to become a creator. As to why they would be frightened of evolving into a higher order being, none can understand except themselves. I'm going to get into my theory of magic more so tomorrow when we get into everything. But, yeah, I'm not sure necessarily how much I buy into the magic. Again, without getting into spoilers for Higurashi, it's sort of colored my view a little bit on this matter. But I appreciate everybody for stopping by today. This went longer even than I thought it would because I didn't think that that thing would take as long as it did. I don't really know what to do with this VOD. I don't know if I will keep it separate or if I will stitch it into the end of the other one. I will probably keep it separate because this was so long, and I will just cut out the Tea Party section off of the other one. Okay, and the intro is playing. Thank you, I guess, for interrupting me, intro. There's probably somewhere to disable this in the settings. I just don't know where. But we'll leave it at that for now. Oh yeah, top 3 overall. Let me look at that. I'll do that right now. Top 3 overall. Oh. Okay, first I'm going to say I'm not going to include Beatrice. It feels like a cop-out. I am also not going to include Battler. It also feels like a cop-out, although I will say, if I included both of them, Beatrice would be in my top 3 and Battler would not be. Not that I dislike Battler, but anytime you have a main character, it's sort of just like a self-insert. I don't really know if I view them as necessarily the greatest. In terms of characters, I don't know if anybody on the witch side would even be close. Pouring out for 556, damn. I don't think Angie has been around long enough to be in the top 3, but I could see her breaking into it, although I don't know if she will make a return at all. I appreciate Angie's attitude. Fuck, this is so weird. Okay, like I said, I'm gonna put, I know this is, you know what, we'll give a top 5, okay? Because at least then for the bottom 2, I can have something to it. Number 5, I'm gonna say Rudolph, okay? I have no fucking reason for why. I just like Rudolph. There's something about him. And I will say, and I will get into this more tomorrow, there's something more to this motherfucker. He is going to be essential, I think, going forward. I don't think it is going to be as simple. There's something going on with Rudolph. We'll leave it at that. But Rudolph, I would put at 5. 4, I would probably put Natsui. I like Natsui a lot. She hasn't been around long enough, because she has been around for 1 episode, and she was my favorite character in that episode. But she got fucking clapped. And she really hasn't been around too much in every other episode, because in episodes 2 and episodes 4, she died in the first Twilight. And episode 3, she kind of didn't really do anything and then died with Kraus. So I would put her at 4, mainly because she had a really strong showing in 1 episode. At number 3, I'm gonna give an honorable mention to my goat Nanjo, because he does fucking nothing and it makes me laugh every time, but he doesn't get on the list. But he can be the honorable mention. Number 3. Ooh. Number 3, I would probably say Kiri. It is nice to have a character that feels like she puts some puzzle pieces together. It's nice to not that any of the characters it's one of the things I hate the most. And I think this game sort of avoids it a little bit with Kiri, although Battler does seem to take off the stupid hat and then put on the I am very smart hat from time to time. But nothing drives me more crazy than having a main character that you have to play a game through or watch a movie through or a show through, and the character is just the biggest fucking knuckle dragger of all time, and they're so stupid. So I appreciate that Kiri exists to be able to not only provide a little bit more of a deep cut, but also that she provides a little bit more of like a reasoning, and a lot of the stuff that she says ends up being like groundwork for Battler to spring off of. So I appreciate that. Now I will say, okay, like I said, if I were to put Beatrice on the list, Beatrice would probably be number 1, and you would bump everybody down by 1. But since I'm not going to include Beatrice because it feels like kind of a cop-out because so much of the game is centered around her, my top 2 characters are going to be, number 2 is going to be Rosa. And it's not that Rosa is when I say good, I don't mean good in the sense of like good or bad written. Rosa is probably not a good character in the sense that she is a good person. But this is true of both of my top 2 characters. I find Rosa very interesting. I find that whenever Rosa is around, I think she's a little bit of a wild card. Arguably, I might even put Rosa at 1. But my top 2 are going to be Ava and Rosa, currently. Ava is an unmitigated bitch. Like, she just 100%, nothing else to it. Unmitigated disaster. Not only was she I would put Beatrice as the highlight of episode 3, but Ava would be the highlight if not. So Ava's always at the forefront. She lives relatively long in a lot of scenes. She has a lot of really good interactions. I like her. I am going to switch it. I'm going to put Rosa at 1. I'm going to put Ava at 2 and I'm going to put Rosa at 1. The only reason why I'm going to put Rosa at 1 is I feel like for this entire game, and I think this will be true going forward, to be fair, I think every character in this game, every one of the siblings will probably have some role to play that will be a little bit bigger than what we've seen so far. I think Rosa is such a wild card to me because she is already different enough from the siblings in the sense that she wasn't born close to them. We basically just had a whole episode. We had 2 full episodes where Rosa had a relatively big spotlight on her. Episode 2 was a pretty big Rosa focus, and episode 4 had a lot of Rosa focus. I think that Rosa is a lot more central to this plot than would probably otherwise be believed. I also think that Rosa is really important in episode 3, even though she dies. Rosa is literally the reason why Ava gets to be the spotlight in episode 3. She's the one that gives Ava the hint, although to be fair, I guess you could say that Kiri kind of gave her the rope to work with prior to that. Rosa, to me, it's kind of the same reason why I find Ava interesting as well, and Rudolph to a certain degree. I find Kraus to be the most boring of the 4 siblings. He's kind of just... He had a little bit of some moments in the 4th thing, but Kraus is kind of just an asshole. I don't want to play like the Western man card, but he's also just kind of like I don't want to say he hates women, but man, he really doesn't seem like he loves Natsui. I have a little bit... I find that these 3 characters are very, I would say cunning, in the sense that they can kind of wear different hats and act different ways, depending on like what the situation calls for. And I appreciated that, I would say the only thing is that the reason why, it's really close. I would say Ava and Rosa are really close at 1 and 2. I don't even know if I could necessarily put them above each other. The one thing that I like more than Ava is it seems that Rosa, the only thing that I don't like about her character from time to time is she does fall into the pitfalls of, I don't want to say them pushing her character into having like a hysterical breakdown, but she has so many scenes where it's just like, oh, Rosa flips a switch, oh, Rosa's angry, oh, Rosa's going crazy, and it's kind of like a one-trick pony at times. But I think that's maybe potentially going to have more that's going on with it. I respect Ava for being able to balance both, where she can not only be like an unmitigated bitch and be a total asshole, but she can also be a bit more composed, but even when she's being composed, she's still kind of a cunt. She's still kind of snide. Yeah, I like Ava a lot. Now, least favorite characters. I don't know if this is going to be... least favorite. I don't even know how to word this. I don't know how to say this nicely. I don't really know if I like any of the servants at all. I like Shannon the most. I don't particularly like Cannon. I don't really have opinions about... Goto was an asshole in like the first episode. I wasn't really a fan of him. But he kind of grew on me a little bit. I'd say I'm neutral on him. I don't really care about Kumasawa. I feel like Cannon has got a lot of spotlight, but I don't know if I'm necessarily in love with the guy. I like Genji, but he's another character where like his whole character is being like this even-keeled, never responds to anything, like straight-faced the entire time. So it kind of gets hard to like enjoy the character necessarily, although he did have a few cool scenes. I think it was in episode 2. I do think that he's going to have a little bit more going on as well. The fact that I'll save this for tomorrow, but I think there is a pretty good belief that Genji and Ronove may be the same person. And that was just off of one line that Ronove said while fighting Jessica. But again, we will get into that tomorrow more so. George? I don't know if I like George. I don't think I do. I feel like George's whole thing is that he doesn't have any... I don't know how to word this. George would... I don't think I fuck, I don't know. Bottom 3 would probably be... I'm gonna be honest, I don't hate Maria, but I don't particularly like her either, but I don't think she would scratch bottom 3, but she wouldn't be near top 3 either. Kraus would probably be in the bottom 3. Kinzo, now the fact that he doesn't exist is a question mark. I don't even know how to feel about any of the scenes where he was present. Kind of makes me want to go back and look at all the scenes where he was around. Let me just go character by character here. Kinzo, not a big fan. I would say on the bad side of average. Kraus, bad side of average. Kinzo is interesting, but I don't know if I necessarily like him, and I find that he's very one note. I kind of like characters that can be a little bit versatile. That'd probably be like the thing that I enjoy the most about them, and I just feel that Kinzo is very often one note. But I hear your reasoning. I'll put him more at average, we'll say. Kraus is on the bad side of average. He's definitely bottom 3. Natsui I really like. Like I said, she was Crack's top 5. Jessica's weird because I feel like I can like Jessica a lot, but I feel like she hasn't really had a lot of scenes to shine by herself. Or she hasn't really had... I don't know how to describe this. This is going to be the most, like, cliche, like, fucking jerk-off statement to ever say, but I like characters that have depth. Surprise, surprise, who doesn't? I just find that Jessica's character so far has been kind of surface level, but not in a bad way. It's just I wish that it was fleshed out more, and maybe it will be later. Really, outside of Jessica, we just know that she talks uncouth in a way that her family doesn't like. She is going to be the next in the line of succession after Kraus, assuming that we still never really got a full answer on that. I think we did at one point, but the line of succession will go from, like, Kinzo, again, assuming that it would follow the regular way. It'd be Kinzo to Kraus to Jessica, then to Ava. It goes down the family line before passing back. But Jessica doesn't have, like, a ton of fleshed out, but I like Jessica. I like Jessica. I would like more, though. As I already said, Ava, tied for top character. Hideyoshi, ugh, excuse me, fucking burped. Hideyoshi I like, but, well, it's not really anything bad. Hideyoshi is just kind of just there. He's a funny dude, though. I respect him. He's on the good side of average, but he's probably just pretty average. I agree with you with George. I think my problem with George is that he's just like a golden boy. And, like, everything they does, like, oh, George, oh, George, oh, George. And it's just like, fucking woof, man. I don't care anymore. Stop talking about George. Stop talking about how he's so great. His fight with Gap, bro, was just, like, prolonged for way too long. And really, what the fuck is George's character other than, like, he's trying to get with Shannon, and everybody just says he's great at everything. I mean, like, he had one scene where he's had, like, a pop-off. And other than that is, like, him being good with kids. Great, George. You're, like, what, 23 or 24, and you're trying to get with a 16-year-old? Good job, man. Like I already said... Okay, why I didn't right-click there, bro? I left-clicked. What the fuck? Let me go back. Rudolph. Rudolph is my secret goat. I think if Rudolph has, like, some pop-off later on, which, again, we'll get into tomorrow. There's more to this motherfucker. He could pop up higher. Kiri I like, although I do... Even though I praised her for it earlier for being, like, a smart character, I do think that Kiri has also been pigeonholed into being, like, the smart character. When I was talking about not being versatile, Kiri really hasn't been super versatile. She had some scenes more so early on where she was in, like, episode 1. But a lot of her scenes have been just, like, let me be the brainiac, let me be, like, the crime solver. So I hope she gets more scenes that are, I don't want to say that are more humanizing, but that are less like, I am literally just, like, 200 IQ, solve the crime, although I will still like that part of her character. I still like her. I don't want some more versatility out of her. Battler, I'm left-clicking! Is my mouse dying? Dude, I just bought this mouse to replace my other one. Battler, I don't dislike at all, but again, he's the MC, he's like a character insert. It's hard to judge him as a character. He's alright. Nanjo is my GOAT. Best character, for sure. Top 1, not close. Has maybe, like, 50 lines of dialogue in the whole game. That's an understatement, of course. I know he has more. But, quite literally does nothing in the whole fucking game. And the fact that he is so inconspicuous, and the fact that he seems like he is so inconsequential makes me think that he will be very consequential in the second half. The fact that he is such a glossed over character, but the fact that he doesn't do shit, and the fact that he constantly gets killed by Sloth and like every single thing fucking kills me. I love it. Nanjo is my GOAT. Rosa, like I said, top 2 character. Maria is such a weird character for me. I don't hate her. And I hate to... God, this just comes off really bad. She feels a little out of place in the story. She also feels like she draws suspicion on her, but this is one of those things in like mystery genre things that it feels like when you have people that so obviously draw suspicion onto them, it is almost like a counter to them actually being suspicious, if that makes sense. It's very odd when you have a character that is so obviously like, oh yeah, look, there's a cult murder going on, and we have a girl going around that's like chanting in magic circles and doing all this random shit, right? I appreciate her character. I appreciate more some of the things after getting more backstory on it in episode 4. I will still say at times she grinds my gears, and I do think she is another character that kind of just plays the same role in every episode, but I will guarantee on like 100% that she is probably going to be very important going forward. I like her. I would say she's on the good side of average, but I also just find that because of her age relative to everybody else, she kind of sticks out like a sore thumb at times, and maybe that's kind of the point, but I feel like her interactions are limited also by that fact. On to the servants. Unfortunately, there's not really a lot to say about the servants because most of them don't really have personalities. The only 2 that really do are like Shannon and Cannon. Like I said, Genji I like, but I need more to like him because he's kind of just existed and not really done anything. Shannon I like the most. I'd say Shannon is close to top 5. I like Shannon. Cannon, like I said, maybe this is just me being a hater. There's just something about him I'm not too fond of. I wouldn't say I dislike him, but I don't know. There's just something about him I don't like. I couldn't tell you what it is. Goda, again, I didn't like him at the end of episode 1. He was probably like my least favorite character because he was just like a douchebag in every opportunity in episode 1. And there still is other times where he was, but I think he redeemed himself enough that I just put him at average. Kumasawa I like, but I would say she's also average. Again, she's another character that feels like she is too inconspicuous to the point where I feel like she might be a little bit more guilty than she is at times. Okay, I fucking right click again because I have brain worms. Call me RFK. Let me open up the witch side. Lambda Delta, not a huge fan. Don't really like her. But I think that's sort of the point. I think she is kind of the overarching actual villain of this game, even though we are fighting against Beatrice. Burn Castle, otherwise known as Rika. I like, mainly because of other ties to the other game by this writer. But, not sure her role in this. It's hard to really have much of a take on either of these 2 characters because they just kind of don't show up that much, but... Beatrice, I think, is the best character in the game so far, but again, like I said, it's sort of a no shit. She's kind of like the character outside of Battler with the most screen time, with the most interactions, with the most things going on. Already went over Maria. Angie I like a lot, but I need to see more of her character. I don't want to be rude to Battler, not that he's a real person, but I definitely prefer Angie to Battler by a fair margin. I hope she sticks around even though we did see her get annihilated. Maybe another Angie from another timeline will advance to that point and re-enter the game. Kenzo, already spoke about him. Sakutaro I like. Don't really have much reason to dislike him. Hasn't been around long enough to build up a reputation of me really, really liking him. Virgilia, I don't really understand Virgilia. I kind of liked her in episode 3 when it felt like she was sort of the foil to Beatrice, but then finding out that it seems like she's sort of just a puppet to Beatrice for the rest of the other chapters, can't really say I'm a fan. Although technically puppet of Kinzo, but Kinzo is not Kinzo because he's dead. That's a whole thing we have to disentangle. Ronove I do like. I do like Ronove. I like him. He's a little bit fickle. He kind of flips on a dime. He does random shit. You know, it is what it is. Gap. Hello. I am staring disrespectfully. Hello. I really liked Gap in the last episode. She's only been around for like like a third of one episode, not even. I thought it was funny that she was talking about going against the orders of the people that summoned her. Thought it was interesting. I like wildcard characters, and she seems like she could be one if she stays around more. She asked her sisters again, can't really have much of an opinion. They pretty much show up, shoot bow, disappear. Pour one out for 556. But, I know the whole meme with the Chiester sisters, these are all supposed to be like calibers, although maybe I'm slow. I don't know if there's calibers that are 0-0. I'm not a gun person though. But you have 556, you have 4-5. It's kind of funny. The goats, I mean, they're quite literally the goat. How could you have them as anything else? Best character in the game. Of the 7 sisters, half of them don't really have a personality because they don't show up. I think before I said that Leviathan was my favorite. I don't know if I necessarily agree with that anymore. Mammon feels like the easy choice because she existed. But out of all like the characters that show up that had like the funniest interactions, we'll give it to Mammon, and we'll give it to I actually thought that Asmodeus had some funny interactions out of the 7 sisters. Beelzebub, boring. Satan, boring. I like Belphegor too. Belphegor is also up there. The top 3 of the sisters are Asmodeus, Belphegor, and Leviathan for me. And on to the Angie side. Not really much to say about almost any of these characters. I like Amakusa, but he, again, was around for maybe 2 or 3 chapters at most, and not really much. Fuck this bitch. Fuck Kasumi. Not a fan. The only Kasumi we like is in Persona 5. Royal, that is. And yeah, I think that's about it. I'll update that as we go. But that's all for now. Be back tomorrow. We'll go over theories. I'll probably cook up some shit tonight. I'll try not to do too much off stream. I'm probably just going to format the notes such that they're readable in the doc, so that like the blue text is actually blue text, the red text is actually red text for people that read through it. But I'll figure all that shit out then. And I'll be back tomorrow. We'll do some actual theory shit, and I will try not to theorize too much such that it is an actual stream of conscious tomorrow when I'm actually going through it. And then we will hopefully actually crack the answer arcs on Monday. Although then Monday will probably be later in the day, but I'll talk about that tomorrow. And of course, the intro starts to play because you sit on the title screen for too long. So, now wait, you know what? We'll end watching this, okay? Because I don't think there's anything that's new, because we've seen everything that's in the intro, unless they're going to start another one whenever we start the question arcs, or the answer arcs, rather. I think we've seen everything now. That was also a random ass scene at Jessica's fucking talent show or whatever at her school. That was odd. Ow. Shout out to George getting fucking clapped by Gap too. That gotta move Gap up the it's gotta move Gap up the fucking tier list, right? Obviously, unless we discount magic and everything, and then she doesn't really exist, you know, blah blah blah. But you know, as the game presented it, at least. Angie has shown way too much in this to not return in the things. Okay, that's all. Bye bye.